Good evening. Is it my turn to talk? No, Owen's frozen.
Am I frozen?
Yeah,
I hear you.
Okay, I hear you. You aren't moving.
Oh, okay, that's weird. I don't know. Give me just a second. I'll figure that out.
There you go. Now you're moving again.
Okay, that was bizarre.
Off to a great start. This is great.
Yeah. Anyway,
did we agree who's main hosting? I don't think, because you're on the left side, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're main hosting.
No, it doesn't matter too much to me. I mean, you're familiar with it. Do you want to?
Okay, sure. Why not? As you can see, we are totally prepared here, folks. Hello, folks. This is The Line After Dark. We are your hosts for the night. We're your two talking heads. My name is Eric from a channel called Skeptics and Scoundrels. And to my left is Owen from the channel Telltale. How you doing tonight, Owen?
Doing well, yeah. Just kind of hanging out, doing my thing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is great. This is the second time we've co-hosted together, folks. If you didn't know, Owen and I are both ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, so we are massively overrepresenting that small little religious sect on this show. But that's okay, because I think witnesses kind of have a unique perspective when it comes to Christianity and what it means. And many people out there argue that Jehovah's Witnesses aren't Christian, and we could potentially be convinced of that. It depends on what the definition of Christianity is. But the funny thing is that there's so many denominations of Christianity. There's so many opinions about what the Bible says and what God wants, and there is really just no consensus over that. So maybe that may be something you want to call in about. So that's kind of like a open invite to anybody out in the audience. Folks, if you're, we value theist callers. We prioritize them. You can see at the bottom of the screen, we have the number 720-619-2288, or you can use the web link in the description. And currently the all lines are open. So folks, if you're out there, give us a call. If you're a theist and you want to convince us that a God exists, or you just simply want to tell us what makes you believe, and you kind of want to put it to the test and see what a little bit of a friendly, good-natured, good faith scrutiny would look like against your belief, that would be really fun to do. Or folks out there, if you happen to be like a Jehovah's Witness, even better, you want to call us in, engage with 2XJWs. We won't reveal your name or your face or anything like that. You'll be safe from any repercussions from the organization. But yeah, feel free to call in. Or if you just want to call in as an atheist, commiserate about something, or you want to discuss something that you observed or anything, call on in, and let's get a conversation going. So yeah, while we wait for callers to kind of filter in, Owen, I mentioned this before the stream started, but in our last pairing, I gave a little bit of my background about my upbringing as a Jehovah's Witness and kind of what got me out. And I think during that episode, I basically said, well, I want to hear your story after this next caller, and we never got around to your story. So I figure while we're waiting, you want to tell us a little bit about your background and as a Jehovah's Witness, and kind of where you're coming from and what got you out, and kind of what motivates you to do what you do today.
Yeah, 100%. I can talk about that. I was born into the religion, as a lot of people are, and as I'm sure you know, that was really, really difficult to get out of. It's even harder to get out of it if you were born into it, because your entire family kind of, entered into it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was born into it. I was baptized at 14 or 13. I don't remember. But I was the first kid in my congregation to get baptized, and everybody looked up to me for a while there. And wanted their kids to hang out with me for a short time. Anyway, I as I got a little bit older, I started realizing that it was I was missing a lot. I was missing a lot of experiences in the world that everybody else got, and that was made even worse by the fact that I was homeschooled for like 4 years and, not allowed to have any friends or anything like that. It was like awful. So,
Yeah.
anyway, I went back to high school and I just kind of experienced life. I went to some parties and I hung out with people and I had a girlfriend and everything. And I end up getting disfellowshipped because I told them eventually, I admitted to it. I mean, there was a kid
Yeah.
that was like reporting on me in high school, but when they confronted me, I just told them because I felt that was the right thing to do. How ridiculous in
Hmm.
retrospect. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, so I end up getting disfellowshipped on basically on my 18th birthday. I stay out of the religion, for the rest of my life, but I still believed it for like 5 more years after being
Hmm.
disfellowshipped. It
Yeah.
wasn't until like maybe 23 or something that I started connecting the dots.
Yeah. So would you say that within the XJW kind of community online, there's like some phrases and acronyms and initialisms we use. So would you say that for those 5 years you were physically out, mentally in a POMI? So like
Yes.
you were out of the congregation, not physically engaging with it, but still mentally you were a believer and all that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
definitely POMI. Yeah, that's not a
Yeah.
term
POMI.
yeah, I use often. It's usually PIMO, right? Because physically and
Yeah.
mentally out. But
Physically
yeah,
and
I
mentally
was
out, I think is the most common thing, but
Mhm.
POMI is also like kind of like the version of that where you're the opposites going on. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I like what you mentioned there with how you felt like you were missing out on your childhood because I think when I started deconverting, it was a very emotional time for me because, as you mentioned, being a born in, you are denied a lot. Not only are you denied, normal developmental steps as a child, like birthdays or extracurricular activities, or even like dating and all that kind of stuff. You're kind of just denied all of that in deference of the religion. So when I started deconverting, I was fairly emotional at the time because I didn't really have anything else to work with. I didn't have the tools of education or philosophy or logic to really work with, and I think while now I don't feel like I am very emotional about my deconversion anymore, like I'm not angry at God or anything like that, I still do look back and I do still do have anger at the what you mentioned, the denial of what children should normally experience, like normal developmental things. Like, I mean, my first birthday that I celebrated was when I was 27, 28. Like that's when I woke up, and then I had my first birthday shortly after that. Uh,
Yeah,
so yeah,
absolutely. That shit gets to you deep. Like, there are things that I will just never get back. Like when I first
yep,
started celebrating Christmas, I remember I mean, even to this day, to some degree, I just don't know how some things are supposed to be done. Like
hmm
who where do the stockings come from? Are those from Santa? When do you open the stockings? Can you
yeah,
open them anytime, you know? Are the presents supposed to be addressed from Santa or from the parents or what? Like, there are things you just
yeah,
don't know that are just part of culture
yeah.
that
All
you
this
weren't a part.
all this protocol, yeah, like we're like kind of foreign to us. Even saying simple things, like I remember, I'm a lot better at it now, but even every once in a while, I'll still get kind of tripped up. Somebody will say "Merry Christmas" to me or "Happy Holidays," and I'm just not in the habit of even just uttering those words back. Because as a Jehovah's Witness, you're supposed to say like, "Oh, thank you, I appreciate the thought." Like, don't reciprocate, but at
Yeah.
least show appreciation that I understand you're thinking about me and you mean well. But I'm not going to reciprocate back because I don't celebrate this holiday. So even just saying simple things like "Happy Birthday" or "Merry Christmas" or "Happy Holidays," every once in a while I'll get tripped up and I'll be like, "Oh," somebody will tell me "Merry Christmas," and I'll be like, "And a Merry
Right.
Christmas to you too," like very unnatural.
Yep.
Yeah, just
Absolutely.
little things like that. People don't kind of realize like when you're not brought up with that culture, it's kind of a foreign thing, and it's like a shoe that'll never quite fit
Yep.
right. Maybe another 50 years or something like that will be better, but well, that's cool. And so like I guess kind of wrap it up before we get to calls. You have two calls in the queue. You have two theists. That's great. So hang on, theists. We're just going to wrap this little conversation up. What what motivated you to start your channel? Because I've been listening to your channel for quite a long time. I think here's how my memory works. I bought this house about 8 years ago, and I remember walking my dog on the first year, and I remember listening to your channel in my headset as I'm walking the dog up down the street when I was brand new to the neighborhood. So like that's how long I know I've been listening to your channel, like 7 years now. What made you start with your channel, and like what was your motivation, and did you have like anything? Did you ever imagine that you would kind of get as big as you did and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. 7 years, damn. I mean, I've been doing it for
Yeah,
almost 10, so that was really
yeah,
early. Yeah, I started my channel because I was on YouTube listening to arguments after I had just finally like kind of snapped out of it. My brother-in-law was talking to me randomly. He was still in the religion. He says to me, "Do you know that like Joseph Rutherford had a mansion built for himself and had it
hmm,
be dated to Bible characters?" And that was the thing that made me realize like, oh, this is all nonsense.
yeah,
And I started looking into all of the other, religious arguments, realized they were all trash. So started looking on YouTube and I saw that there was a vibrant atheist community, but then they started moving in like this weird direction that I just didn't want to be a part of. So I figured I might as well start my own channel and start talking about it. And it worked out. I had no idea I would get as big as I did. So that's pretty cool.
that's pretty neat. Yeah, it's always fun to listen to like all the different motivations that people have, and yeah, the mansion that you mentioned that Rutherford built, Beth Sarum, and
Yeah.
kind of why it was built, what they expected to happen, and how it didn't happen. And I think now that mansion's been sold to non-witnesses, and that's always a fun topic to go into. Like whenever Jehovah's Witnesses build a building, they will dedicate it like it's like a ceremony. They'll dedicate it to Jehovah, like
Yeah.
giving it to God. But then later on, when times get tough, they have to sell the property. So how do you sell something that you dedicated to God? Is there like an undedication ceremony, or do they just simply ignore the fact that hey, this has already been given to God and they don't really have a right to sell it anymore? I don't know,
Yeah, I
but
know. Yeah.
yeah,
I was actually I remember I used to go to this Kingdom Hall a long time ago and I remember finding out that it was sold to some Methodist group or something and I
yeah,
was like, "Oh god, it used to be holy and now it's like super
yeah,
unholy because Christendom's in there." It's so funny, man.
yes,
How
yeah.
you view this stuff, you know?
The Kingdom Hall I went to in North Carolina when I lived there for 3 years. They ended up my birds are going nuts. Hopefully, you guys don't hear them. But the Kingdom Hall I went to in North Carolina for 3 years was a little tiny, like it was like a house, like an inverted house. And I know that was like sold to like a Baptist church down there once the new Kingdom Hall was built. And there was like a lot of questions in the congregation. I was like, well, wait, hold on, wasn't this like, why do we do this? Why do we sell something that belonged to God? Um, but yeah, it's fun stuff. It's fun, like kind of drilling into like all those little nitpicks and eccentricities
Yeah,
of the Jehovah's Witness religion. But
absolutely.
cool. Well, hey, hey, if we get more filler time, I'd love to maybe drill down to that a little bit more. But yeah, thanks for sharing your story with us. Um, is there anything else we want to talk about before we get into the first caller?
I don't think
Anything
so.
else?
I think we can hit the first caller if you're ready.
All righty. Okay, let's go ahead and start with I think Gary. I think you've waited 1 minute longer than the other caller, so I'll bring you in first. Gary, hello. You're from Pennsylvania, and you're a theist, and you have a statement here and a question. Your statement is there is one Christian truth, period. And then the question is, do you have a spirit? So, Gary, welcome. You want to elaborate a little bit on that question before we start to answer it?
Yeah, thanks. I saw your program show up in my feed, and you stated something pretty interesting that none of the denominations agree with one another, and you're absolutely right. And just
Yeah.
recently, I would say over the past uh, maybe 20 to 30 years, we've been learning that that's not a good thing. And there's actually a method where there's only one interpretation, and it's not given to like denominations to have their own. It was never actually that way to be, and so that's why I wanted to call, and I also had that question.
Okay. So you're saying that basically you agree that there's a lot of denominations. I think by the last kind of recent count, there's like 35,000 Christian denominations. And you'll find some agreement between them, but you're going to find a lot of big differences between them. Like, for instance, as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, the Jehovah's Witness religion, they're Unitarian. They don't believe in the Trinity. They think that, God is God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit are all kind of three distinct things. But then you have other religions, I think they're all kind of one. So you're going to have big, like differences in even just like in the nature of God. But you mentioned that there's one method for getting to the correct
Yeah,
interpretation. Is that was that what you were saying?
Yeah, and actually, it's always been in the Bible, but I guess God had to reveal it. But basically, there's a method of interpreting which is called comparing spiritual with spiritual, and basically the framework is God is a spirit; His word is spiritually alive and breathing, and there are words that have life. The words are life; they're spirit and they are life. So basically, you're comparing words with words, and I'll give you a perfect example. If you see the word tree in the Bible, if you look it up quite a bit, in one instance, there was a blind man, and when Jesus came by, he gave him sight. He could see a little bit, and he said, "I see men as trees walking." And then if you look at another verse, you'll see like Christ is called the vine, and we are the branches. And in another verse, you'll see, "And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water." So these spiritual references point to something. And with comparing spiritual words with other words, once you get a preponderance of evidence, it will actually direct you into what something is. But if there's an apparent contradiction and you're not sure what it is, you can't proceed further. You shouldn't teach on it. And you kind of have to wait for understanding on a certain topic. But certain denominations didn't do that. They had different methods. They had different leaders with different agendas. And so the truth became more and more polluted. And I think in the book of Revelation, they talk about,
So this method that you're bringing forward, do you think this is a reliable method? Like, does it always get you to an accurate truth claim, like an accurate value for a claim? Like, for instance, like just the claim that God is a Trinity or versus God is not a Trinity. Like, how would this method be used to determine which of those two statements is the true statement?
Yeah, and great question. So in Christian faith, most people would believe that the Holy Spirit guides them. But if someone doesn't have the Holy Spirit, there are some natural fundamental principles that someone can derive some understanding. So basically, by using this precept called line upon line, here a little, there a little, that's in the Old Testament. If people just use some fundamental principles, that policy of just using the Bible to define itself, instead of somebody claiming that they had a dream or a vision, which, by the way, after the Bible is completed, it violates Scripture to do so. So basically, the reason why Jehovah's Witnesses and Catholics and all these other people don't get along is because they just set up their own traditions, and sometimes they're obviously evil spirits and tares. These are so-called Christians who insert themselves.
So Gary, let's rewind a little bit, because I was asking about the method that you're using, and we kind of went off into a tangent about other denominations. Like, walk me through it step by step. Okay, we have the question in front of us. Is even just the question? Let's say you make it more basic. Does God exist? Okay, a simple question. Is a yes or no answer to that question. It can't be both. It has to be only one. Either God exists or He doesn't exist. How does this method get you to accurately answer that question? Like step by step.
Answer is yes. Yes, God exists.
Yeah, I figure that's your answer, but how did you use the method to get to that answer?
The method of that answer is to actually listen and read what it claims and let the Spirit guide you into truth through that spiritual analysis. So
letting the Spirit guide you. Tell me a little bit about that. What does letting the Spirit guide you mean?
It means basically if there has to be an elective drawing process that God will actually choose who He wants to reveal Himself to. And by doing so in the Bible, you will see that, I have a buddy, on the line who's a lot more.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm trying to get more into the method here. You just dropped a couple keywords there about God chooses and elected. Would you happen to be a Calvinist, Gary?
No.
You're not a Calvinist.
Some of his principles were accurate, but I'm not a Calvinist.
Okay, but I'm still asking for the method. Like, give me the step-by-step, play-by-play, how I use your method to come to an accurate understanding of the claim about God's existence. Like, how does that work? Because
Well, someone won't be able to do it by a process or a method, because God is like a spirit that goes where it wants. So Nicodemus, tried to come to Jesus, and Jesus was talking over his head like the Matrix. And
So
basically,
you
we're
mentioned,
saying the spirit goes wherever it wants. And so when you say, give me a process, the fundamental process is faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So if someone were to come to truth, to know
so
God is
Gary,
real,
all right, so
yeah,
Gary, so I'm getting a little confused here because earlier you called it a method, and I've been trying to stick to that terminology, a method, step by step.
yeah.
And now you just said that it's not a method. It's just God will decide what God wants to do. And so that
So
kind of puts, like, as an outsider, I'm looking to this and I'm going, how does this at all get you to an accurate understanding about anything? Because can somebody, like, let's put it this way, can somebody can somebody claim that they have God's spirit and God's direction and be wrong about it?
yes, and that's where
Okay.
the whole faith and works
So Gary,
gospels kind of come in.
so Gary, if somebody can claim and think and, like, legitimately think that they have God's spirit but not actually have it, how do you know that's not happening to you?
Because God says his spirit will witness with our spirit that we are children of God, and that's not something I can demonstrate
But
to another individual.
okay, so if you can't demonstrate it and you can't know if you're wrong or not about it, because you mentioned earlier, I mean, you admitted earlier just a few moments ago, you can think these things but be wrong about it. How is
Correct.
this at all a reliable method? I see no reliability in this
Because
method of yours.
and that's why I posed that question to you: do you have a spirit? And once you're able to answer that question to me, I'll be able to relate to you spiritual principles and proofs that you would be able to identify and activate. So if you have a spirit, then I can continue to speak in a spiritual way. But if you're looking for a logical process, the spiritual methods will not engage with the logical process.
What? Okay, so
That makes
fine.
sense.
What's a spirit? If a spirit is a key, sorry, Owen, I'll ask this last
Oh
question,
no,
and then
you're
I'll
good.
let
You're
you
good.
dive in. Okay, what is this spirit? You asked what do you mean by spirit?
Essentially, a living soul,
What's a
an
living
inner
soul?
man, an
An
inner
inner
man that
man?
is energized and communicates and indwells, where God Himself will actually dwell with your life. You'll have a new and living way.
Okay,
So a living
I
spirit
Yeah.
instead of a dead
I
spirit.
feel like what you're giving us is not I feel like you're using some language that I don't fully understand. I feel like it's kind of flowery language that describes the way that you feel about it emotionally, but I'm trying to get to like an actual definition here. I'm trying to understand because if you're correct on
Right,
this, I also want to be correct, right? How do we
right,
know that you know you have the correct interpretation of God and not like a Muslim, for example, or something? Because
right,
Islam, Muslims are just as confident, if not more confident. They're 110% confident that they're correct
right,
versus my 100
right.
or 90 or whatever percent. So get me there.
I can't get you there. And it's pretty interesting. You said I was using emotional or flowery language. I was actually quoting the spiritual words to see if that would have some kind of
Well,
interaction with you. So I wasn't speaking on
the
myself. I was
words.
actually quoting the Bible.
Well, you said it's the inner man or whatever. I'm not sure
Yeah,
what the inner
that's a
man
Bible.
is.
Yeah.
Right.
The Bible
So,
can say it, but it doesn't tell me what it is exactly. I mean, the Bible has its own context for different things, but I'm trying to understand like what these things actually mean. The soul
right.
is not actually literally like an inner man. It's not a little guy that's pulling levers inside of me. So what is it?
So the inner man is essentially the heart, the soul, and the mind. It's a combination of who that person actually is apart from their physical body. It's their spiritual essence, their life force. And that's what
Okay.
God breathed into man. It's separate from their physical brain, their logic, their intellect, their human force. It's actually something that can survive even when a person dies. Their spiritual force can actually continue on after someone's heartbeat stops and their brain is dead and
Okay.
their body is
Well,
useless and
I
decays.
haven't seen any kind of indication that there's anything in anybody like that. But if there is, we should be able to come to the correct conclusion. Should be able to like figure that out. There should be some kind of deductive way of
And
determining if that
yeah,
really does exist, right?
Yeah.
that's right.
And
Hey, Carl,
more importantly, Gary, there's, as Owen said, it's really important that we have a good way to come to know whether that we're right about this or not. But I think equally as important is if we are in fact wrong about this, if you're in fact wrong about the existence of a soul, do you have a way to know that?
the way to know about that would be on the spirit realm, because a logical, let's say you're logically trying to determine if a spiritual life force exists or not. That would not be able to cross over unless you're truly interested in stepping into the soul realm. But if you're on a logical spectrum,
So Gary, in order to believe, you're basically saying, in order for me to believe, I have to first believe.
No,
this is very circular here.
no, it doesn't. It
Okay.
doesn't. You don't have to believe, because that would be a work.
So Gary, as somebody who does not have evidence for this, as somebody who does not believe this, how do I get started? That's why I'm asking you for this method, because like I'm at a point where I don't believe the soul exists because I see insufficient evidence to accept its existence. I don't believe in a spirit realm for the same reasons, and I also don't believe in a God for the same reasons. So I'm a blank slate. Imagine I'm an alien. I just landed on Earth from a different planet. I've never heard of any of this stuff. Never heard about the soul stuff or Christianity or Islam. Pretend I'm just a blank slate. And I have logic and reasoning skills, but I just don't know any of this. How do I, as that blank alien, get started?
I would say drop all of your logic and reasoning and start to get curious about.
So I have to throw out logic and reasoning to get to your position?
Correct. That's right.
You are implicitly admitting that your position is illogical and unreasonable.
And that's the point, because the way God, the spirit life force, the Almighty, he actually designed it in a way that it would appear foolish to those who try to approach with logic and reasoning. Because if you would think about it this way.
So Gary, you've now opened the door to believe anything for any reason. If you're throwing logic or reason out the door, you are now opening yourself up for literally any belief, no matter how silly or contradictory or absurd. You can't possibly think that this is a good method. I'm sorry, Gary, you can't possibly think this is a good method. Go ahead.
If you read the Bible, it talks about trying the spirits, right? So you can't just go in and just say, okay, so-and-so just said they're a magic, man, or whatever the case is. But in the Christian faith, there is a method of calling it out as trying the spirit.
Well,
so,
good.
How do I know that this is the correct thing to believe, other than Islam? Like, Muslims believe the exact same thing as you, and they think that they followed the spirit, and listened to all of the whatever. How do we know that you're correct and not them?
So there is, within the Christian faith, there's an underlying theme that the spirit will guide you into truth. And if someone comes with another...
Well, it led them too. It led Muslims to believe exactly what you believe. All right, let me phrase. It led them to believe just as confidently. Completely different thing.
And in fact, Gary, the Muslim belief says that they have the same mechanism that you do, and also Christianity is corrupted, so you shouldn't trust it. So we have these two competing claims. We have these two competing claims, as Owen just brought out, that Muslims say the same exact thing. So now, how can we, as outsiders, differentiate between the two? They're identical to us.
I can point but remember, this is all spiritual. But I can point to you that there is a filter, and based on what these spiritual claims are and their proofs and evidences. So, for example, if someone were to say, "Well, what's the difference between Islam and the Christian Bible, the Quran and the Bible?" Well, the Bible makes certain claims about itself. The Quran will make certain claims. So if you compare and contrast them, you will find that the Quran says, read the Bible. And the Bible will say, read the Bible. But it doesn't say, read the Quran. And those who say, well, I have the truth, I'm a spiritual man in the Islamic faith, well, once someone doesn't know anything, they're an alien, they just landed on the earth, and someone says, okay, I'm a spiritual man, here's the Quran, and another person says, well, here's the Bible. Once they start to read, they'll start to have something called discernment. In the spiritual realm, of course, as the Spirit guides them to truth based on the claims and the spiritual words that are being compared.
All right. So what about like, I mean, I have an endless number of holy books that I could list. I don't think that, I don't think the Quran says that, but even if it did, what about, any of the, what about any of the holy books? Like, you're giving us something that is contradictory and not helpful and is like a non sequitur.
But again, those are logical, smart, really appropriate in that discourse kind of realm. But in the spiritual realm, a spiritual book is going to start to make claims. It's going to start to have foundational principles in which the spiritual guide will say, this is how you live a perfect life, or this is how you live forever, and it's going to have certain laws and principles. But
Okay,
I got a buddy who's smart.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this: the Quran or any other religious book is going to have. Yeah.
Gary, hold on here. So even if it is true that the Quran affirms the Bible and the Bible affirms itself, that doesn't mean the Bible's true. Both books could be wrong. In fact, I think that is the case, that both books are wrong. I reject belief in both books until belief can be justified. So here's the thing. We're asking you for a method, and you have told us that there is no method. You called it a method, but then you said that it's not a method. And then you got to tell us that it's not reasonable and it's not logical. And you just have to simply believe before you can accept belief. And this is, like I said, with this system,
you don't have to believe.
With this system,
that's incorrect.
Okay, with this system, you can use this system and believe anything you want, even contradictory claims. So, Gary, let's get really basic, okay? I have a feeling that you use logic in most of your life. For example, if you point at something and go, that is a basketball and that is also not a basketball. Like, that's a contradictory statement, right? It's like nonsensical, doesn't make, like, you would reject like those two truth assignments to the same object, right? Like, something's a basketball and also not a basketball. Please?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you do value logic on some level. Why then are you throwing? And here's another question too. This stuff that you're trying to demonstrate to us, or show to us, do you think that it is important that Owen and I accept this as true?
If I may humbly state, you don't have to believe, and you don't have to logically decipher this. Again,
Gary, I asked a very specific question. Do you think it's important that Owen and I accept this as true? Like, maybe our souls are at stake or something?
No, not at all. Acceptance,
it's not important.
Logical is not a prerequisite at all.
A prerequisite to what?
Yeah, I don't understand.
The reason why this, if you guys give me a chance, I'll be able to explain. The nature of the Christian faith, it requires that you do not have any works in the matter. So a baby, someone with a disability, someone on their deathbed, someone who's resisting spiritual things are eligible for salvation based on the lottery system. And these are some of the things that we've learned with the Bible, comparing spiritual with spiritual.
So folks are elect and chosen by God, or they're not.
Correct.
Okay. That sounds a lot like Calvinism, but I know you don't want to use that label, but fine.
It's a principle
God chooses who is elect and who is not. Is there anything that person can do to change that? Can a person not be elect, but do something to make God change his mind about whether that person's elect or not?
No, and they're not interested either. If they're not elect, they're just basically going to say, well, that sucks. I don't care. I don't believe it. And they kind of move on.
Do you think God cares to save souls or not? Does God want to save as many souls as possible?
He's not willing that any should perish.
Hey, Gary,
but
do you mind if I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed, but he has a two-way on. So, but as far as what Gary's talking about, I don't know if that's even allowed on the show.
Well, we'd appreciate if we were told beforehand, but fine, go ahead and drop your thing.
So what he's getting at is that there is, because it is true, anyone can approach the Bible and come up with their own conclusion. That's why you have so many different denominations out there. So the question is, how do you know if you have truth? How do you know this group has truth or this group? And the Bible does give a proper method of discernment. Right now,
that's what I want to know. The method. That's perfect. The Bible gives a method. Okay. The Bible gives a method of discernment. How does that method work?
Okay, so are you familiar with when John said to Jesus, "Behold, the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world"? Are you familiar with that?
Are we familiar with that? I think I've heard that verse before.
Okay, so when John was he speaking to a lamb?
Was he speaking to a lamb? I don't remember what the verse is. Give me the verse. I'll take a look. What was it?
I don't know the exact reference, but it's when John was baptizing Jesus. This would have been.
Oh, okay. So you're saying Jesus was called a lamb, and the question is, was he referring to a literal lamb? Okay. Well, I will accept your argument tentatively and say no, he wasn't.
Correct. And how do you know that? And how would you know that that's the case?
Through logical deduction, because because the context of the book clearly states that this person was talking to this specific other person and talking about that specific other person, and there would be no reason to
most Christians might argue and say that Jesus in the Bible is referred to. Most Christians would say, well, Jesus, I know because Jesus in the Bible is referred to as a lamb, right? Like if you go to Revelation, the lamb slain, right? So in other words, the Bible is basically its own interpreter. So the way you know he's not speaking to a literal lamb is because it's metaphorical, and the Bible is its own interpreter.
Like I can understand what you're getting at there, except the Bible is made up of 32,000 verses. It is written by dozens of authors of varying social classes and levels of wealth. And it's impossible to not cherry pick the Bible because there are so many varying opinions. Anything the Bible says is reversed a chapter later.
Well, when you really study the Bible out, you can actually see that it's actually from the same author, though different men penned it. See, everyone, even Christians think, well, this is what Paul said.
Why is it that...
So they were...
Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, basically, a lot of Christians like to say, like, well, Paul penned this, or David did this, or somebody penned this, right? Realizing that they're moved by the Holy Spirit.
Then why do they contradict each other? Why is there so much contradiction all through it? There are
that's a good question. So this is how God designed the Bible. He actually designed it to have an apparent contradiction. Right? And I know that may sound strange, but Jesus told
God designed it to have an apparent contradiction.
Sure.
So God purposely, I would say, sabotaged earnest effort to understand it because he put a contradiction in there, or an apparent contradiction.
He says this. He says, seeing they may see and not perceive, and hearing they may hear. He says, shut up their ears so they do not hear it. And the disciples asked Jesus, they said, why do you speak in parables? He said, because it is given for you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God, but it's not given to them. In order for God to hide truth, he spoke parables, right?
So Gary's inner voice there. So let's rewind a bit here, okay? We were asking for a method earlier. I said, use the alien example, like, hey, just from square one, tell us what the method is. And you keep appealing to the Bible, but Owen and I reject the Bible as being true. We are not convinced that what the Bible says is true about a God or about spirits or about any of that. What can you do? And I'll ask this one last time. What method can we use to get past that hurdle and get into believing the Bible? Because I want good reasons. I don't know about you guys. Gary, particularly, I'm kind of questioning this. But me personally, I want to have good reasons for my beliefs. I want to believe as many true things as possible and as few false things as possible. And as such, I am very particular with my process and my methodologies. I'm careful. What can you give me that can get me to believe what the Bible says is true?
Well, there's nothing, because the Bible teaches that one cannot actually believe unless God's given them a new heart, a new soul, because naturally mankind is at enmity with God, right?
So I just have to believe. I'm asking you, what can make me believe the Bible? And you're simply saying, well, the Bible says this,
nothing.
Bible says that, which doesn't at all help me
Nothing.
with that.
Well, nothing of ourselves. So in other words,
yeah.
the
So
only,
that's
the
this
only
kind of
what the Bible teaches
this kind of
about
goes. This goes back to the Calvinism thing, right? So it's entirely in God's hands. So either make us elect or not.
Right.
So if it is indeed the case, if it is indeed the case that Owen and I are not elect, and that is explicitly because God did not do something for us. It's entirely out of our hands. Okay.
Right. Well, this goes back to election, but the Bible clearly speaks of election. The word election is used in the Bible. You know, people act like it's so foreign, like Calvinism, some way off thing, but the Bible says election.
All right.
So if
it is the case that there is a God and he has elect and he doesn't have an elect, why even bother with all this teaching? Like, it feels like you guys just wasted 30 minutes of our time because from all this conversation, we still don't have a methodology.
We don't know if you're elect.
We still don't have the methodology. Okay, we still don't have the methodology. We don't even know whether we should trust his Bible or not. We don't even know if this God exists or not. Like, everything that we've practically begged you guys for, you have not given us. Like, anything. Where can we possibly go from here? Because we're in a position of sorry, what?
You want lies then? Do you want lies then? We're telling you exactly what the Bible is saying.
But here's the thing. I think you're so used to Christians trying to tell you, hey, because Christians try to convert, right? Muslims try to convert. Jehovah's Witnesses try to convert. Right. We try to convert because we realize it's out of our power. Yeah.
Like, look, this is what I'm interpreting. I'm interpreting you as saying there is no proof here. You just have to believe. You don't have any good reason to believe this. And you can't convince anybody because there is no good reason to believe this.
But I'm not even saying you just have to believe because you can't of yourself. So in other words, there's a person in the Bible who's called Simon the Sorcerer. He believed and he was baptized, but yet found out he was unsaved. So it's not about belief. It says the devils believe and tremble.
So you're just saying we're going to go to hell then, basically. You're just calling
we don't know if you're elect.
Oh, I shouldn't have opened that can of worms.
God could have saved you. So God could have saved you, but I
didn't believe in hell either. So, we'll just forget about hell.
Well, it's not that we don't. Wait, let me clarify. It's not that we don't believe in hell.
And God is an irresponsible deity, but he's not a monster. Come on now.
Right. Right.
Wait, so let me clarify our position on hell. So hell, I don't know if you guys know this. Hell means the grave.
Yeah. So hey, guys, Gary, hold on. Gary and Gary's inner voice. I'm sorry, we're not going to go much further. We've been doing this for 30 minutes. You just admitted that you're not here to convert, and frankly, we're here for your reasons, and we want to be convinced. If it's true, we want to be convinced. And by your own admission, you can't do that. Only God can turn on some switch in our brain in order to make us believe. And the fact of the matter is that hold on, I'm going to mute you. The fact that any religion can say that, the fact that you are offering us nothing different from the Muslim religion, or you could be some pot smoker on here telling us about how Puffy the magical dragon is the one true God, and we simply have to believe, and it's up to Puffy to put that in us. These are all indistinguishable from us. It really feels like you've wasted 30 minutes of our time because you are not here to convince us. You're simply here to make claims, and we're not here to entertain that. We want to be shown whether we're wrong in our position or you're right in your position. And by your own admission, you're not using logic, you're not using rationality. You are not here to do those things. We're kind of just wasting our time at this point. So fellas, I will give you 20 seconds to make some final comments just to be gracious, and then we're going to go ahead and part ways. So I'm going to unmute you.
Sure.
Give us 20 seconds of your closeout, and we'll go ahead and part ways.
So,
thanks so much. I'll go really quick, 10 seconds. Do you have a spirit? Because that's really what it boils down to. And if you don't even know if you have a spirit or not.
So by your confused definition, by the confused definition I was presented with earlier, no, I highly doubt that I have a spirit.
And that's perfect. And so this would not appeal to your logical reasoning.
So I would say this. You mentioned it was a waste of time. I mean, have you ever had callers who try to convert you? Was that also a waste of time? So whether
the callers that try to convert us at least try to engage with reason and logic in order to present their case, not just claim after claim after claim, fluffy, confused language, more claims.
I would say that the Bible, you really study the Bible actually proves itself. And I know that sounds odd because I know a lot of atheists come from the standpoint you have to have something outside the Bible to prove the Bible.
It's called corroboration.
my question to you is, can the Bible prove itself? Right? Like a lot of the Pharisees told Jesus, you bear witness of yourself. Your witness is not true. The Bible, though it bears witness of itself, yet it's true. It's the
Okay.
same.
So
Jesus is the word.
So I
well,
don't
we
accept that.
appreciate.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Go on.
All
I
right,
was going
I'll
to say
go.
I don't
Yeah.
accept. Sorry, there's a delay. I don't accept that a book can prove itself. The same way that I don't think that the Quran can prove itself or the Vedas can prove themselves.
Well, can
We
the
need
Bible disprove
corroborate.
itself?
We need Gary.
Can
We
a book
need
disprove
The
itself?
Bible can disprove itself by presenting a contradiction, which I think it does in
Okay, so you
numerous
can go
spots.
to the Bible. So let me ask you that. If you can disprove the Bible, you're going to the Bible to disprove it, correct? You're going to the book to try to disprove
If the
it. Like if you
Bible,
find
if no, you don't go to the Bible as if it's an authority. If the Bible says that Owen is a basketball and Owen is not a basketball, I can say that's a contradiction and therefore false. And that's not me putting stock in the Bible. That's me making the factual statement that it makes two contradictory statements. That doesn't give any credence to the Bible. Now, if the Bible made nothing
you're
but
going to it.
if the Bible made nothing but non-contradictory statements, that'd be a step in the right direction. But then those non-contradictory statements would need corroboration from other sources in order to be to grant warrant for belief. That's because
I what contradiction you found. Can you present a contradiction in the Bible?
Sure. When Jesus was talking to, I forget what chapter it was, Jesus was talking to some folks and he was promising about his return will be before they all die. He will come back and basically with an army and stuff like that. And that never happened. So Jesus made a claim, supposedly. That claim did not come to be. So we have a contradiction there. There's also other contradictions when it comes to things like prophecy and other things. I have a spreadsheet on it here, but I don't have it up in front of me.
This is huge. All you got to do is read Ezra 2 and Nehemiah 7.
All right.
You're going to find.
So you guys got your 20 seconds. Owen, you had a comment, and then we can close out.
I did, yeah. I did want to just say, guys, I don't feel like it was a waste of time because it was an interesting conversation, even though I feel we came to no conclusions. I did have a good time having the conversation anyway. Also, you sound like super nice people, and that's why it took me by surprise when you basically said that we're fucked, for lack of a better term.
You're not.
So anyway.
You're not. It's a lottery system. The lottery.
Okay. Well, it sounds like that means.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You do have hope. Put it that way. If you stayed out of the churches, you have hope. Put it that way.
Goodbye, fellas. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was fun.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, they were.
Sorry. One more thing I wanted to mention. I didn't have an opportunity to pull this up in the moment, but here I have it. I'm just going to flip my screen over so you guys can see. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen this before.
Testing. Sorry. Yeah, my microphone was. I don't know if my microphone was working or not. Is my mic on
we
still?
heard you. We heard you.
Oh,
You're
okay.
good.
Yeah. So anyway, this is BibViz. It's like every contradiction in the Bible. There are like a billion of them here. I linked to it on my website, owenmorgan.com/BIBVIZ. Just like a billion. You can go through any of them and click them, and it'll tell you what all the contradictions are and everything. So there you go.
Yeah. And yeah, they were pleasant gentlemen and everything like that. Like I had no problem with them as people, but I mean, if you come in here and you're like, okay, I'm going to make these claims, I have no way to back them up, then I have no way to believe them, and we are just spinning in circles at that point. So it, and I appreciate the admission that hey, it's completely up to God, because now God is completely in God's hands. Like if I am going to eternal torment, it's not for anything I did; it's because God chose not to do something regarding me. And if that's the case, then there's nothing I can do about it. And I also don't care about that God, because I don't put stock, or I don't put value on such immoral monsters. It's like I don't know. That's Calvinism is such a weird thing to me. And I know they said they weren't Calvinists, but the shoe fits. So, I mean, whatever. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and talk about our upcoming shows. I have it right here. Yeah, I actually have it ready this time. So yeah, folks, this is a live call-in show. We have multiple shows like this every week. And yeah, starting tomorrow on the 23rd, we're going to have Skeptalk, and that's at 6 p.m. Central Time. That'll be with Dr. Aaron Adair, and it looks like Susan Gerber will be here. Susan's name is in yellow. I wonder what that means. Maybe special guest? I'm not sure. On the 24th will be Chewed Gum with Alusa Lube and Erica of the Guts Gibbon channel. On the 25th, we will have the Hang Up at 6 p.m. Central Time, and that will be with Matt Dillahunty and a currently unannounced co-host. And then on the 26th, we will have TACIS with Jose Caballero and Dr. Ben. And then let's see here. 27th shows a Cus I Wanna, but there's no host, so I'm not sure if that'll happen or not. And then next Sunday, we will have the Sunday show at 2 p.m. with Matt Dillahunty and Seth Andrews. And then in the evening, we will have another Sunday show with Forrest Valkai and John Gleason from Godless Engineer. So yeah, tune in for those. It's always fun. And on those shows, super chats are read, and there's a bit more of an audience engagement. But on this show, we will not be reading super chats. But feel free to send them in. They will appear on the screen, but they won't be read at the end of the show. And I guess that's all we got for right now. We'll go ahead and move on to the next call here. We're going to bring in our next theist. We have Mark from South Carolina. Thank you for waiting for almost an hour, Mark. We really appreciate that. Your comment here is my supernatural hijinks and 3 near-death experiences. So,
hey, sounds like fun.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, let's see. My sort of religious quest started about 5 years ago. I heard a story on NPR about near-death experiences and how much you can actually know about life after death and all that. And that piqued my interest. So I've been studying it ever since. But I do have personal experiences with ESP. I had a job in public radio, public television, and I heard a bunch of people coming down the hall, so I went to my door and looked out, and there was a psychic who had a bunch of people following her, and she looked at me and she gave me a free reading. She said, "Oh, you are creative." She said, "You're very creative." She said, "They don't understand you around here." And I thought, well, this woman is psychic. And she told me a few other things that nobody else knew. A friend of mine was having trouble with his brother, and so he asked me to take her back, to take him backstage before her appearance. She was doing a 90-minute call-in show. And he just said 5 words to her. He said, "A word about my brother." And she said, "Oh, yes. He just wrecked his car. It was two-tone blue and green. He'll be getting a new one soon and doing much better." Now, he didn't even say that it was a car wreck. It could have been a dental problem. It could have been anything. And the two-tone, she just pulled that out of the air. So,
okay.
And,
have you ever heard of cold reading before? Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I sure have. Now, how does it? Okay, okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Darren Brown before, but he does really good like cold reading stuff. He is nearly indistinguishable from a psychic, but he's an atheist and is very clear. Like he's just doing tricks. It's a skill that is learned. Knowing that, does that change how you feel about, the fact that somebody did a cold reading thing on you?
No, I've been down that road. And this was not a cold reading. I mean, how could it be?
Reading, right? It just wasn't like you believe that the cold reading was supernatural, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And I saw her during the.
Hey, Mark,
I saw her do a 90-minute.
Mark, just to really drive home what Owen was trying to tell you there, right? So, do you think there are people that are subjected to cold reading, but they're convinced that it was actually a psychic? Like, do you think cold reading has tricked people?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay. How do you know that's not happening to you here?
Well, she had nothing to go on. She hadn't a clue.
Had nothing.
She did not have a clue.
Do you not think that a cold reader can look at you and maybe pick up details about certain aspects? Like they can look at your age, they can look at your clothes, they can look at your health. They can look at perhaps you have a wedding ring on your finger or not. They can perhaps look at, see what's in your pockets. Like, do you have a pen sticking out of your pocket? Do you have like a portfolio? Do you have there's, you just being there, you are screaming so many details about yourself that somebody else can look at and pick up on. Like, how do you know that you're just, how did you know you just weren't, well,
how do I get from
how do you know you weren't just, for the lack of a better term, how do you know you weren't just a target or a victim of a cold reader?
It's just absurd.
Why?
Not absurd. You just
how
admitted
could
earlier
a
that
cold-
you just admitted earlier that cold readers can fool people. How do you know you weren't fooled?
Yes, because of this instance. Now, how do you get from a ring and all
Doesn't
that
tell me
stuff
anything.
to my brother just wrecked his car and it was two-tone and what the colors were? No, just no.
Okay, you know that
Let's move on.
I'm gonna go back to Darren Brown for just a second because he's like a really good example. You know that
Yeah.
he's walked up to random people on the street and he has guessed their
Oh,
profession.
I've seen him. Yeah.
Right? How is what you're describing more nuanced or different in any way than what he does? You're saying that that the brother got in a car accident and they could have had no way of knowing that. Well, Darren Brown has guessed equally as esoteric or unusual things about people. How do you know when he tells us it's not supernatural that this person is supernatural when they're doing the exact same thing?
Well, he does certain things that doesn't he have to. I've seen him work. He's brilliant. Doesn't he have to touch people
No.
and have a sort of verbal?
I mean, I think Darren Brown has different ways, and maybe he seeds the audience. Like, who knows? I don't know, but it's nearly indistinguishable. It is indistinguishable from supernatural cold reading. So, how do we know if somebody is doing it supernaturally or just really good at hiding it?
Well, if you you can claim that. I just don't believe it. It's just too incredible.
I'm not claiming anything.
Okay, well,
You're telling me you think it was supernatural. I'm telling you we have natural explanations. We don't need a supernatural explanation.
Okay, well, let's see. Somebody can make a real diamond. That doesn't mean that anybody who gives them a diamond, that diamond was also homemade.
So you're saying just because we know how the cold reading trick works doesn't mean that some of them are not supernatural. I guess that's true, but I
Correct.
don't have any reason to think that it's supernatural because it's easily done naturally. So what reason do you have
let me give you,
for thinking that it was supernatural?
Yeah.
I have 90 minutes of reasons. I saw her do call-ins, telephone calls from all over the state. This could not be plants. One woman called up and she said, I'm going on a trip tomorrow. And the psychic said, oh, yes, you're going to Stuttgart. Now, cold reading? I think not. This woman just knew it.
I'm not sure why it couldn't be cold reading. You know what? I think that we've talked to you before. Have we talked to you before?
Yes.
I thought so. Yes, and I remember you showing this video of a cold reading trick that was very clearly just like a trick. That one was just not supernatural at all. I don't know.
The Whip Forest.
I don't know if the cold reading to which
with Anderson Cooper
was actual cold reading. I don't know, but the one that you showed me before was definitely just a trick. And I've just never seen one that was not a trick, and I have no reason to think that there is a supernatural one. I don't know.
Well,
yeah. So it's
how did she know about Stuttgart?
So Mark,
everything is cold reading to you.
Mark, for a moment, put yourself
illogical.
Mark, for just a moment, do your best to put yourselves in our shoes. Okay, you're talking to a person who's bringing these very out there claims to us and claiming that it's supernatural behind it.
Yes.
Like let's say we're betting. Let's say I have to bet money on this. I have to bet money that it's a supernatural event, or it was just a cold reader fooled you, or cold reader fooled your friend, because this is now like an anecdote territory where you're telling us what happened to somebody else.
Right.
Where should I put my money? If I want to make money off of this, or I don't want to lose money, where should I put my money? On the supernatural or on a cold reader fooled somebody?
You should put it with logic.
Okay. That wasn't the two choices I gave you, but I kind of agree with that statement. So what would logic tell me where should I put that money? That something supernatural happened, or somebody tricked somebody else?
The stranger would not know that he just wrecked his car and what colors it was.
What's more, Mark? So hold on, Mark. Address the question. What's more plausible? A human fooled another human, or something supernatural occurred?
Well, they both could happen.
What's more plausible?
Depends on the circumstances. Well, let me continue just a minute.
I'll even grant you, for just this one question, I'll even grant you the supernatural is possible. What's more plausible?
Okay, well, let me extend this. She also told me that she said, "Oh, you have dark rings around the irises of your eyes. People like that are often have ESP." And I just sort of thought, well, maybe.
Mark,
but I did keep an eye on it.
Mark, do you think you've been tricked by other people before?
No.
Okay. Did you know that you were like you later came to realize you were tricked by some people, right? But you didn't know it in the moment, right?
Not about this kind of thing.
Okay. So, Mark, for a moment, pretend that you were tricked. How could you figure that out?
Well, by logic. Why? Just go with me and let me get to the next point.
We don't want more stories of this kind of stuff. We want to know what your process. So, Mark, we don't. So Mark, we'll be straightforward with you here, okay? You're listing 3 NDEs here. We haven't even touched yet. We're not going to go into that because we don't have time. But this one story, I'm asking you, if you were wrong about it, how would you know? Like,
sorry, I'm having a little coffee fit.
No worries. But
yeah,
you understand our hangups here. Mark. You understand why this is just not good evidence for us, right, Mark? You at least understand that.
Well, she told me that. Let me just go on to the next event, and then you can double back if you want to.
I'm sorry, Mark. No, sorry. I'm not going to let you go on to the next event. I just told you we don't have time for all that.
Okay.
We're talking about what you've already...
Well, there's no use in talking to you.
We're talking
about... There's no use in talking to you.
Mark, there is, if you simply hear me out for a moment here. We want to know what your process is for determining whether you were fooled or not for this one event you've already presented us. Giving us more events, doesn't it all address that question? And doesn't it all shore up these claims? For all I know, Mark, is you are a really gullible guy, because there are lots of really gullible people on the planet. So I'm asking you, how do you get me past that position? How do you get me to a position of, well, maybe Mark's onto something here? Is there anything you can give me other than more stories?
No, not you. Your mind is closed. It's locked closed.
Okay, so you're saying that our minds are closed?
Previous. Yes.
Right, our minds are closed. Okay, well, let me ask you this. Do you think if... I'm trying to think of a really good example. Let's say, hypothetically, somebody really high up in government that you don't trust, like, let's say Hillary Clinton came out and said...
Let's not go that far. Let's just go to Forrest in that previous situation about...
hang on. All right, hang on. Say Hillary Clinton came out and said
about
that
Anderson
Jesus
Cooper.
returned. She says Jesus returned and he came to her house and she had the responsibility of announcing it.
Oh, geez. I'm not going there to this hypothetical.
Just bear with me, please.
It's a waste of time.
Is it reasonable?
Listen, I have a vote in this. It's my quarter.
All right, hang on. Look, I'm going to mute you just for a second. What I'm asking is, do you think it's reasonable for us to check if Hillary Clinton comes out and she says, Jesus came back to my house and he told me I have to introduce the world to Jesus or whatever. Do you think it's reasonable for us to check, to verify? I suppose it's possible, right? I think that everybody should verify and check everything. And what you're telling me is extraordinary. You're telling me that you call in and this person tells you like your name and your state and where you're going and your mom's maiden name and all of it without having said a word to you beforehand. That's extraordinary. I'm going to walk into that tentatively because I need evidence to believe extraordinary claims. I'm telling you, I've never seen anything to indicate that any tricks were supernatural. Everything I've seen indicates that they're natural. Okay, I'm unmuting you. Go ahead.
Well, you haven't seen everything. You were just totally close.
Show us. Show us. Give me some reason to believe it.
Okay. She said, we'll look for psychic events. And I looking, I found four of them.
You
And
sent us that video previously. I watched that, and that was not an indication at all of a psychic event.
Yeah.
Are you gonna? Do
No,
you
I
have
didn't
other
say-
videos like that?
Yes, I do. And I didn't tell you, I've never told anybody this one. Well, some people, my friends. The
I'm
first ones are not very impressive. I was leaving work late at night, and I just knew, it's knowing, it's not just maybe. Am I muted?
No.
I can't hear you.
no, you're here.
Yeah.
I don't. I haven't been given any reason to trust that you haven't been tricked in some way, and I know that you don't have any reason to think that you haven't been tricked in some way either. If no matter what the extraordinary, insane thing is, I want to check. I want to verify. I don't care how confident I am. I am 99% confident in things because there's that 1% chance that I was incorrect. Right? Do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there that 1% chance that maybe you were tricked by these?
Well, I've already thought these through, and I cannot find a possible way. Two cards? No.
How? Okay, so you are 100% correct. Sure that you're correct. If you are 99%, as I am about everything, how would you figure that out?
Well, I'm willing to change, but I find no reason to change. And you show me a reason to change, I'll change.
I think that we need a reason to believe the things that you're claiming because they're
Okay.
extraordinary. And so far, I know that these tricks are possible to do without supernatural means. So a
Well, that's meaningless,
non-supernatural
though.
explanation is the most likely. What is it?
That's meaningless. If somebody can do it as a trick, that's fine. That doesn't mean it every time it's a trick.
Why would we think that it's not a trick?
Why would you think that it is?
Okay, well, I simply
It's just
disagree.
illogical.
Seems we're at an
Okay.
impasse now. I don't know what to
Yeah.
tell you. I
Yeah,
just
well, let's steam forward. And I'll get to one that you really want to agree with. I was watching television, and
Okay,
there was
Mark.
this.
Mark, I'm muting you, Mark. I already told you no more stories. Because Mark, an anecdote, a story from somebody is very poor evidence for such a claim. Multiple anecdotes does not build up into good evidence. It's just multiple bad evidence. So, Mark, we're not going to entertain any more stories here. We want to know how you know this is actually the explanation rather than some other naturalistic explanation, something more plausible, that you were tricked or you have bad memories, or even from Owen and my point of view, that you're simply misstating what actually happened to us for whatever reason, whether it's a poor memory or you're lying, all kinds of possibilities that you have to overcome before you can even start to approach the supernatural. Now, if you want to increase the probability in our eyes that the supernatural is the actual case, you can give us a demonstration of the supernatural. You can say we could do this, this, and this. You can interact with the supernatural, like something like that. But if it's just another story, you're adding nothing to the table that you haven't already added. So, Mark, I'll go ahead and unmute you. You give us your final comment here. We're going to move on. But I hope you understand. I hope you understand, Mark, that Mark, I hope you understand that lots of stories does not equal good evidence. You can have 1 million stories and it's not good evidence.
you're unmuted now. Oh, I think he dropped.
I think he left. Okay. I saw a comment in the chat like, "Hey, Eric, don't get too angry." I'm like, I'm not angry. I'm maybe a little hangry. I didn't eat anything today, so I might be a little grumpy.
Yeah,
but
that's why you got to bring these puppies right here.
Yeah.
Rice Krispie treats. Gotta love.
Yeah,
those
maybe a
things.
Snickers bar. That'd be so good. I'm trying to get back onto a keto diet, so I like grab some Ritz crackers, and I was like, no, this is gonna keep my keto from taking off. So whatever, it's fine. But it's really hard to get people to understand, like, when you're hearing a story from somebody, and this is the major problem with the Bible. This is the major problem with claims of miraculous events or of faith healings, of all these things. If it is just a story, the listener of that story has a bunch of hurdles to overcome in order to accept that story, especially if that story is of something like extraordinary, like of a supernatural event or the interaction with a god or anything like that. Because if that person listening to that story really values truth and really values rejecting false claims or protecting themselves from believing things that are false, they have to think about, what's this person telling me? How do I know that they didn't have some type of psychological state that might have altered their perception of reality in a way that wasn't real? How do I know they're not lying to me? How do I know they're not misremembering? If they're telling me of a story that somebody else told them, now it's in hearsay territory. Now it's like, okay, how do I overcome the fact that this story has now gone through two people to get to me? What has happened to that story? What has the game of telephone done to that story? And on top of that, also all the things, all the factors in a situation that we don't know about. Mark could have been interacting with that cold reader, and that cold reader may have known who Mark was beforehand, maybe do some prior research. There's a great video of Peter Popoff and his wife. They're like having this big faith convention, and they have like people coming up onto the stage, and Peter Popoff is like basically bringing people up off the floor, and all of a sudden like stating facts about them. And turns out that his wife was on an earpiece and feeding him information about these people who had previously filled out applications to be there. So they had all the information on. Like, Mark doesn't know what kind of shenanigans are going on behind the scenes. And Mark is convinced that he does. And it's such a problem there, because if this is true, we need something better than this, Mark. We need something better than your stories and your credulity, because that's not enough for me to believe. It's not enough for Owen to believe. It's not enough for any of us here to believe. And I think Mark would appreciate that if a Muslim was coming to him with stories like this and attributing it to Allah, or if a Scientologist was coming here and attributing it to Xenu. I think that logical part of Mark's brain would flip on, and he would protect himself against those beliefs. Well, Mark, if you understand what's going on there, then you understand what's going on here. Hopefully you'll understand that. But anyway, yeah, let's go ahead and move on to our next caller. I know we dropped a couple of Thea's callers, but I think we have couple callers back, so we got two in the queue. But yeah, folks, theists who are listening in, call in, numbers below. We want to talk, and we promise to be friendly. I'll try to be friendlier. I'll think about eating a Snickers bar. That might help me a little bit. So, okay, we're going to go ahead and bring in Jimmy. Jimmy from New York. Jimmy's an agnostic, and Jimmy asked the question, could the Bible be a trolling book? I like this question. Hi, Jimmy. How you doing?
How you doing, sir? How you doing? I talked to you a while back ago. I listen to your show a lot, and I get educated from you guys.
Well, thanks.
Hello?
Awesome.
Yeah, we're here.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because like what's going on in the Middle East between Iran and versus Israel, between the Jews versus the Muslims. The book says that the land belongs to them, that God gave them the land, that the land is theirs. Well, how come it also says in the Quran that the book belongs to the Palestine? So it's so confusing.
Yeah.
If there's a God, it's either he's trolling humanity or this is just sadistic. What's your guys' thought of this?
Yeah, I think there's a different answer. I think it's just these two books were written by people, and these people had different ideas about what a God was saying to them. I think that's the most obvious answer. But if you wanted to entertain the idea that, okay, a God is responsible for both of these books, then yeah, it could be the case that God is a big troll. Maybe a God exists where his highest virtue, God's highest virtue, he thinks, is to trick people. So that makes sense. He'd make this world, he'd make a bunch of competing religions, all with competing holy books, and he was just a big trickster. Nothing impossible about that God. I don't think that's the case, but there's nothing impossible about it. But yeah, I think man just wrote the book, and the men are wrong. And secondly, if a God exists, then yeah, there's no problem with him being a trickster.
No, because I believe that if there's a God that exists, he might be a troll. Because number one, how can like the Bible says something that science says that science proves that is wrong, and it's like if the Bible is true, that means it was intended to deceive us. Because how can you say in Joshua that the earth went around, the sun goes around the earth? Why that we know that it's opposite now? How is it possible?
Yeah, it's completely
Hello?
unrealistic. Yep, it's completely unrealistic and it's ridiculous. I completely
Yeah.
agree with you.
And Jimmy, there's going to be
Yeah,
a little bit
but
of a delay. There's going to be a little bit of a delay between you talking and us listening and responding. So you're going to have to just be a little patient on the responses. We're here and listening.
all right, no problem, no problem. Sorry.
Yeah. No worries. You were saying?
So, can I go now? Like
Sure.
what I was saying is that that means for countless generation, billions of people have died in most horrific ways for their belief, and it turns out to be bullshit. This is very sadistic.
Yeah,
I,
that's not the only way in which it's sadistic, of course, either. There are like a billion ways in which the Bible is sadistic, specifically, or God is sadistic generally. I mean, really, really messed up stuff.
yeah.
Wow!
I think.
Wow! Wow!
I think a God. I think a God that has the qualities that like Christianity likes to, apply to him, like the omnibenevolent, omnipotent, omniscient. Yeah, I think there's a pretty bad fundamental contradiction between a God of that nature and the world that we see. So yeah, one of the solutions to that is just simply remove one of the omni traits or water it down, or just completely rework the God into something that is kind of more compatible with what we see. But I mean, those are fun thought experiments and such. But for the most part, I think the most obvious answer is that creature, that entity, doesn't exist, at least not in the way that we think it would. So yeah,
No,
that's kind of
but if it
where we
no,
settle. Go ahead.
no, but hear me out. Hear me out, though. So if the entity does not exist according to you guys, then why are people so devout about it? Why are people so dogmatic about it, willing to risk their life about it? That's why I still get stuck about it.
Uh,
If it's all a prank, why are people still willing to risk their life and die in the most horrific ways? That's where I'm not getting it still. I'm still lost in that idea.
yeah. So Jimmy, I think my answer to that is just basically this is just, as Carl Sagan puts it, this is dangerous evolutionary baggage that we as a species have picked up over countless generations. I think religious belief and dogma and such, I think it at one point in the past aided in our survival, to the point where it's kind of wired into us in some ways, to believe things without good evidence, to look for explanations and answers where we don't really have good information to come to a conclusion, because it provided utility to our survival. But I think now that we're in the modern age, I think it's gone from a survival advantage to perhaps a disadvantage, because I think we have so many competing religions. We have so many dangerous people who think that God is telling them to do horrific things. We see wars and shootings and murders and genocides and jihads, and it's like we have a long history of all this. And I think it's just a byproduct of the way that we developed as a species, an unfortunate byproduct, but it's the way it is. Don't think there's any God behind it. Don't think there's any trolling behind it. I think it's just there's a naturalistic explanation that accounts for all of it.
It's a natural explanation that accounts for all this, and it just happened like that.
Yeah.
Wow. So this, like, you said a lot of stuff there, but it's like I don't know. I'm confused. Like right now, like I used to be a theist, but what made me come to your side is that you guys are making a lot of sense. You understand? I grew up in a Christian home and stuff like that, and it's so hard to just let that what you've been taught all your whole life is bullshit. It's kind of like wow. I don't know how to say it, but it's just like you know what's going on right now.
Jimmy, actually,
did you watch?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. So what I was going to say was, I did notice that in the call history here, you did call him before as a theist, and now you're labeling yourself as an agnostic. So, and you just told us that, hey, yeah, you're kind of like deconstructing and figuring things out. And Owen went through that. I went through that. Just about everybody here went through that on the show. So we appreciate the process you're going through because you are opening yourself up to new ideas and new possibilities. And some of those new ideas might be uncomfortable. They might be hard to accept as potentially true. We appreciate those struggles because I went through all of that stuff too when I started deconverting. I guess maybe if I can ask you this is, can something be true and also uncomfortable?
Be true and also uncomfortable. Give me an example. I don't understand. Just give me an example, please. If you can think of one.
Sure. I go to the doctor. The doctor says I have cancer and I have 6 months to live. Just because I express discomfort at that idea doesn't make that idea false, right? It can be, it's a true thing, but it also makes me uncomfortable because I can ask myself, like,
yeah, that one. Given that example, yes, of course, that makes sense.
Okay. So just because something's uncomfortable doesn't make it untrue. The thing that I proposed earlier about why do we see so many problems on the planet from religion? Why do people so fervently believe to the point of them killing themselves or murdering others? And I gave a naturalistic explanation. That might be an uncomfortable explanation. Wow, we just simply developed that way. Like this kind of just built into humans as a species. It's an uncomfortable feeling. I don't like that. But there's nothing in that discomfort that makes that idea false or that disproves that idea. It could be the case that what I said is fairly accurate, and that it's just simply evolutionary baggage that we're having to get rid of. So
I know, but like you said, that in this evolutionary baggage you're talking about, why is it contradictory then? Why is it deliberately contradictory? Like, for example, did you watch the interview between Tucker Carlson and Senator Ted Cruz? Did you watch that interview?
I watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you saw the answer. You saw the answer when he asked Ted Cruz that question. Why do you guys support Israel so much? He said the Bible says that if you bless the land of Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse the land of Israel, you'll be cursed. Yep. That's why they support Israel. You understand?
Yes. Yeah, and I think what you're saying is you're talking about where Tucker Carlson disagreed with Ted Cruz's interpretation. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but it doesn't say in the Bible. It says in the Bible that if you bless the land of Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse the land of Israel, you'll be cursed. You understand?
Yes.
But
yes, absolutely.
But the Bible, but it also says in the Quran that land belongs to the Islamic people. You understand? So why is it deliberately contradictory?
I think that I think the problem is that we evolved the tendency to believe that there's something in the bush because that was safer for us. If there was nothing in the bush, but we assumed that there was, and we run, we survive. If we assume there's nothing in the bush, but there was something in the bush, we die because we're eaten. So we evolved the tendency to believe that there is something there when there is not. And that led to all kinds of fractured, bizarre, disjointed, disconnected beliefs of all different sorts. And I don't think that there's any real reason behind it aside from people just, they just don't. There's just no cohesion because there is no overarching belief that's logical or reasonable or obvious.
Yeah.
No, to me, I believe the Bible. If Bible is true, it was intended to mislead us. Then it was like, for example, let's say like I think it was really intended to mislead. Because why would Adam and Eve still be going after knowledge? Why is that a sin? Going after knowledge. Why does he use the most?
Right.
Why is going after knowledge a sin? Why is that? It's suspect.
There's a whole bunch of stuff about that specific area of the Bible that creates nuance. Like, the book of Genesis is called antiquity literature, and it wasn't supposed to be historical facts about the world. It was supposed to be people go around and tell stories about, like, campfire stories. Like, I don't know if you've heard of the The Frog and the Scorpion, where the scorpion asks for a ride across the river on the frog's back, and the frog says, "You'll sting me." Scorpion says, "No, I won't do that." And then he takes him across the river. Halfway through, he stings him, and the frog says, "Why'd you do that? Now we're both gonna die." Scorpion says, "Because I'm a scorpion, and that's what scorpions do." That's a moral message with talking animals and everything else. It's a campfire story. That was the book of Genesis. There was no line between actual historical narrative and just cultural stories. It was designed to preserve the culture, not necessarily
And,
their exact history.
well,
That's why.
but why you didn't answer my question, sir? With due respect, why did he say if you go after knowledge, that was a forbidden food to go after knowledge? That means there was intent to cover something up. That's what I'm getting at. Because, like,
Well,
why would
Jimmy,
he say that going after knowledge? Why would he say
Jimmy,
going after knowledge was what? Hello?
Jimmy, yeah, we're here. We understand, but like you got to understand, this was written by a human. So this human had certain motivations, certain values, certain ideas, and those were reflected in the story that they wrote. So that story doesn't reflect reality. Or at least we have no good reason to believe that story reflects reality. Like, did you consider that story is just made up?
No, but if it's made up, but why would you say then why would they be punished for going after knowledge? For example, like if I intend, like if you're going on a mystery hunt to get something, and I deliberately mislead you on the place to go, and you find out that I'm lying to you, won't you suspect me of having a motivation to do that?
It could be that the motivation of the writer was to deceive. Maybe the writer really doesn't like the idea of people smartening themselves up with seeking knowledge. We don't know what the person's motivations were, but I see no reason.
No, because you can infer it because like why like for example you heard about Galileo, you heard about Galileo, right? The scientist Galileo.
Yeah.
You heard about him?
Yeah.
Yes.
We know Galileo.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, but why is it that the church, when they discovered that the sun is the sun goes around the earth goes around the sun, why did the sun going around the earth? Why did the church burn him at the stake for that? Why did they do that?
Because they had already existing beliefs that they thought God had given them previously when God didn't actually give them any of these beliefs. They just believed it.
So it's okay. I'm beginning to understand you. It's not like they knew that it was not true, but they just believed that it was true. So it was not like actually tend to do like mischief.
Right. Yeah. They just believed it. That's correct.
I think it was probably just. I don't really know I don't know the motivations of those who persecuted him, but I can guess at them because if these individuals are in a position of power in a church and the church says X, Y, and Z is true, and by the way, God's backing us up on this, and then somebody comes along and says, "Oh, actually, I can demonstrate that X is actually false." That's a threat to their position. That's a threat to their power. It could be that those religious leaders genuinely thought that X was still true. They might have said, "Oh, actually, it looks like X is actually false, but we can't show that because that's going to undermine our power." And therefore, they persecuted Galileo. Like, the very naturalistic, straightforward explanations here.
But the thing about religious leaders, they don't give evidence. Like, they say something, they don't give you evidence. If you ask them for evidence, it's like they stutter. How come, like, as the difference between religious people and scientists? Scientists give evidence for what they believe. Religious people do not give evidence at all. They just say stuff and they don't give you evidence.
Yeah.
Why is evidence such a bad thing for religious people? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. The ultimate reason for that is because there is no good evidence-based reason to believe pretty much any of this stuff. If there is an evidence-based reason, then I will believe it too. They haven't provided that. And that means it's all built on emotion. And there are a bunch of movements throughout history, even recent ones in the past, in the 20th century, namely, that have been based entirely on emotion rather than logic. And when you have no evidence for your claim, you make up evidence because it makes it seem more credible. Like, there were a whole bunch of really ridiculous, absurd claims by the Nazis, for example, that were not based in reality. But they needed to spread these beliefs or these ideas because they wanted more people to accept it. And there was no good reason to accept the things that they were saying. That's just
okay. Then one. Can you just name one? Okay, but please, sorry. Can you just say what I did in Access believe that was not true? That you say that was not true at all. What? I can. You can. Which one?
Which
Then
one
one.
did?
Give me an example. Just give me one example.
Okay, I don't know about what you believe, but for example, the Nazis in World War II, they believed that when a mammal mates with another mammal, they believe that the DNA of the male mammal stays in the female until the female dies. So every child that the female sires will have the DNA of the first male. That is just objectively completely false. There is no, there is no evidence or nothing to believe that, no reason to believe that whatsoever. But believing that gave them reason to demonize interracial marriage. They come up with these reasons, or they come up with these beliefs, these things that they want to reinforce, and then they come up with reasons to believe it afterward. Is that called post hoc ergo propter hoc? Am I right on that? I might be using the wrong term.
Yeah, I think it's
Probably
a
they didn't like
motivated
black
reasoning.
people. Probably they didn't want to. They didn't like black people. If they were racist, I can understand that. But if they don't want to mix their race, I can understand. I can understand that reason why they don't want that, because they want. If they wanted to just have pure white people, I can understand that. I can understand them having that kind of belief.
Well,
Then,
but there's no
they
good
were, they were, they were,
reason
they
to
were,
there's no good reason to separate races like that. The only reason people have to separate races is emotional. That's it. And they have to come up with
no,
reasons after the fact.
no. But if you don't feel comfortable with someone that doesn't look at you, I don't see anything wrong with that. If you're comfortable with your own type of people, there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Why? I mean, why would you be uncomfortable being around someone who doesn't look like you in the first place? Are you uncomfortable with people who have like
question.
gray hair?
Excellent question. Can I answer that question?
Sure, but
it's probably
first,
not something that you're used to.
You let me work this other question and you can answer them both for me. Are you uncomfortable with
Sure.
people that have gray hair?
Gray hair? No, gray hair is not. Gray hair, that's no. They don't bother me. People that have gray hair.
Why?
No. That's not significant. Gray hair, that's the color of people's hair. Gray hair, that's not significant at all.
Who gives a shit? Who cares? Why does anybody care if someone has gray hair? Nobody cares, right? So why does it matter if they have white skin or like black skin or whatever? Why does any of that matter? Doesn't, right?
It doesn't matter if they have white skin. That's how they're born. That's their genetic makeup. But it's like if you don't want to associate yourself with them, that's your cup of tea. You understand? I mean, that's your preference. Everybody has their preference.
Like if you want to do that, that's fine. But I'm going to call you a complete sack of shit if you do that. And B, I don't think that should be enforced by law. People shouldn't be allowed to force others not to get married to interracial couples, or they shouldn't be allowed to force members of the black community to not go to school with white people, for example. Those things, forced segregation or whatever, are wrong. But there,
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. It shouldn't be forced by the government, but every individual has their own preferences. Like if you don't want to hang out with someone that has gray hair, that's your cup of tea. You understand?
Sure,
that's your decision.
I'm not gonna tell people that they're not allowed to avoid people with gray hair or whatever, but I'm gonna call them a sack of shit for like not hanging around people for some intrinsic quality about themselves. That's all.
But can I ask you a question? Isn't it not okay for you not to like somebody? Do you have to like everything?
No.
Don't you have preferences?
No, you don't have to like everything or everybody. No, absolutely not. But if you don't like somebody for some immutable, unchangeable thing that they were born with, then you're a sack of shit. Like if somebody was born without an arm and you just don't like being around people that don't have arms, or you don't like being around people with gray hair or no hair or whatever, you're for that reason alone and no other, then you're a sack of shit.
Okay, I see your point. I see that if you don't like them for what they have, for the qualities they have that they're born with, and you just don't like them for that. Okay, if it's not for their character, I can understand where you're coming from here. I can understand, but like when you say culturally, like I'm from Africa, I'm from Nigeria, and we have different cultures of people that we don't hang out with. That is different from us. We're not used to them. We're not used to their ways. It's foreign to us. So for us not to get in conflict with those people, we stick by ourselves. We don't get involved with them. Is that okay to you?
I see what you're saying.
Like we have,
It's a culture that I'm not familiar with. I don't think that you have any obligation to avoid or to hang out with people that you don't want to hang out with, but in an ideal world, I would like to see integration. I would like to see people come together, live together, work together, and not avoid each other for ridiculous reasons. So yeah,
but that's not realistic, though. That's not realistic.
Well, Jimmy, it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter what a majority of humans do or even some of humans do. It comes down to our values. So, like, we can ask you the question, Jimmy, what kind of world would you prefer to live in? A world where people are judged by their, what kind of world would you prefer to live in? A world where people are judged by their physical characteristics, or versus a world where people are judged by the quality of their character? Which of those two worlds do you prefer?
Of course, though, if you give me those two options, I'll choose the one by their character. Of course, if you give me those two options only, yes. Good. If you give me those two options, yes.
So you and I are in alignment on those values, and if that's the world we want to see, then you and I, but we align on those values. So that means you and I can team up and help make a world more like that, and we can find other people that are more in alignment with that, and team up with them. There will be people out there who will say, I want to see a world where people are judged by the color of their skin. And as Owen says, we can sit back and say, wow, those people are pieces of shit, and not associate with them, or better yet, try to change their minds. So, but here's the thing, though.
My question is, I have to judge by the color of skin. Skin color is not a characteristic of behavior. That doesn't even make sense. How can you judge someone by the color of their skin? Skin is not.
I didn't say it was.
You give us two examples. Hello?
Color of a skin is a physical characteristic, and I'm saying that's not the world that I want to see. If I bump into somebody who does want that type of world, I can make a judgment about their character, avoid them, or try to change their mind, and that would be like having a reason with them on why their values are like that.
No, I misspoke. I mean, color of a skin is a physical characteristic, but it's not a character function. Color of a skin has nothing to do with character. You understand?
I never said it did. I never said it did.
Okay, but given those two options between someone's color of skin and someone's character, of course I'll choose someone's character to live with them.
Then we agree.
But if you include a third option, if you include a third option about someone's character, someone that is my color but has a good character, someone that has a different color of skin that has a good character, I'd choose someone that has my color that has a good character too. If I have more options, when I have those two options, I'll choose the better character, because people feel comfortable with people that look more like them than don't look like them. You understand?
I don't think that there's any good reason to avoid somebody because of how they look. Period. I just don't. And a lot of people in the United States, particularly right now, are spreading this idea that certain people groups, certain races or whatever, are just born with certain personalities, and that is a complete fictitious lie.
Yeah.
That is a fictitious lie that is told to encourage racism and hate. And the fact is, everybody is the same. We're all humans. That's just what it is. So if you don't want to be around somebody because of how they act or whatever, there's no obligation there, of course. But if you avoid people because of, how they were born, what they look like, or whatever, I cannot abide by that.
And, last question again. But what if your culture do not blend with theirs? Like everybody cannot be the same. It's like everybody's not in sync with. That's one thing about this thing about I don't understand. It's not everybody I can blend with. It's not possible. Some people you can blend with, some people you cannot blend with.
You're saying it's not possible for like everybody to kind of live together in peace? Is that what you mean?
It's not, because everybody has different character. Everybody has different directions. Sometimes those things contradict with one another. It's not possible. It's like everybody has different compatibility.
And you can pick a spouse that matches you the best. I'm not trying to regulate that. You don't have to get married to who you don't want to marry or whatever. But you should not hate somebody or fear somebody or avoid somebody or whatever simply because of the color of their skin, period. If they're not compatible with you because of how they act, that's a totally different situation. But we're not talking about that, right?
Okay, I see your point. Okay, I just want to understand you. Okay,
Yeah.
now I got you. All right.
Yeah,
All right,
well,
Jimmy.
I appreciate the call.
Anything else? All right, thank you. I'll keep calling. I like your show. Have a great one.
Thanks.
All
you
right,
too.
cool, Jimmy. Keep thinking.
All right, bye.
It was
I think,
interesting.
I mean, like I said, according to the call history, he used to identify as a theist, and now he's an agnostic. So he's probably grappling with a lot of new ideas. I'm not sure. I don't want to put words in Jimmy's mouth, but it feels like that he's uncomfortable with the fact that there are a lot of people out there with values differing from his and from each other. It seems like he's still clinging on to the idea that there must, like, these holy books are somehow still inspired by a god, and this god's, like, his original question, like, is a troll. And we try to present to him that, well, maybe it's just written by people with different values and ideas. And I think that might be the new idea that he might be trying to assimilate into his thinking, is that, yeah, humankind has a lot of different ideas, a lot of different values, and it may be impossible for us to unify on literally everything that can possibly be considered, but we can still try. And I think we've done pretty successfully. Like we have huge communities of like-minded people that are all working in harmony, not perfect harmony, but at least relatively, safe. Like, you and I are here in the United States. We're relatively assured that nobody's going to, like, kick down our door and kill us for our stuff. It can happen, but for the most part, most people you meet, hey, you align with me on those values because you don't want to see that happen to you. And yeah, Jimmy, like, just maybe, like I said, I don't want to like put words in your mouth or tell you what you're thinking, but maybe try to let go of that kind of, like, uncomfortableness of, okay, well, maybe the world isn't quite the way I expect it to be. Because, like, I don't know what religious belief you had beforehand, but it might be like, you might be still trying to hold on to those things that they taught you, but divorce it from the actual God explanation. And it could be that the stuff they taught you is just outright wrong. So, yeah, maybe, get comfortable with uncomfortable ideas. Is the best way to put it. Maybe, it's easier said than done, but just start letting go of the need for these things to be comforting, and just start kind of going into, okay, what's actually true and what was actually not. I think you'll maybe do better.
Absolutely. And also, I think there's a difference between what we were talking about with race. People are not obligated to hang out with others that they don't like necessarily, but actively avoiding them or trying to, like, force it by law or whatever is just not good. And skin color is just an unacceptable reason to avoid people anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to bring in, we have 2 callers left in the queue. We're going to go ahead and bring the next one in. We have Kyle from, click harder. There we go. Kyle from Montana, MO. And Kyle, you're saying that...
I'm sorry,
what?
It's Missouri. It's Missouri,
hey, Kyle, Kyle, are you driving right now?
Yes, sorry. I have to get back on the road.
All right, no worries, Kyle. I'm going to drop you back down into the queue. So we're not going to want you to drive while talking to us, at least unless you have a headset or hands-free. Going to drop you back down to the queue. If you can pull over again, I'll bring you back up after we talk to our next guest. Let's go ahead and bring in Raphael. Raphael from Poland. Raphael's an atheist. And Raphael, you say you're living in a haunted house?
Hi, Eric. Hi, Owen. Wow, it's such a pleasure to talk to you guys. I'm super nervous. I never call a show before.
You're good. You know what to worry about.
And I have a huge admiration for the show. I've been watching you guys for years. I used to watch much more the 80s experience, but since Matt moved to the line, I came with Matt to the show.
Yeah, I've seen every episode of the Atheist Experience, so I'm right there with you.
I'm an atheist, but I was born in a very religious family, but mixed religious. You know, my grandma was Catholic, but she also believed she also used to believe in some African religions, like because my family is they're from Brazil. I used to live in Brazil, and she also went to some strange cult called Umbanda and Candomblé in Brazil. Those are African religions. They used to do sacrifice with animals and all that kind of weird stuff. But when I was 15, I believe I became an atheist. I stopped believing in God, in anything supernatural. I see no point in believing anything of that. And me and my mom, we moved to this apartment that my mom bought, and we lived there for 10 years. And I don't think my life could be more shitty than was during these 10 years. I was an atheist already. I don't know if I say that. If I say that, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But I always feel this presence around me.
You feel a presence around you?
And it was like if I was never alone in a place. My health dropped. I was always in a hospital with different problems. I never talk about this with my mom, but I don't know. I horrible nightmares.
You feel a presence around you. Is it like only when you're in that house? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, only in the house.
Okay.
When I was sleeping, when I was alone, was like if someone was always watching me. And I don't believe in ghost videos. I don't believe in all that stuff. I don't believe in apparitions. You know.
Well, I can tell you this: when I was little, I was a Jehovah's Witness. I was absolutely convinced that there were demons in the basement that were going to come out and grab me if I went into the basement. I knew for a fact that they were down there. And then when I kind of left religion behind, I started to realize like how, unreasonable that belief was. People can be 100% confident that there's a presence there, and it can still just be in their heads, right?
So you think it was more a psychological feeling?
Yeah. Is there a reason why you feel that way, or is it just like something you feel? Because there's an evolutionary basis for believing that there's something out there watching. I said it earlier. I don't know if you heard, but we are like evolutionarily programmed to believe that there's something in the bush waiting to grab us, rather than believing that there's nothing in the bush waiting to grab us, because that's how we survived as humans, right?
Mm-hmm. I see. But there's a catch on that, because I left Brazil 10 years. There has been 10 years that I live here in Poland, but I still have a friend that live in that same building, and the guy who bought the apartment, he's experiencing the same things that I told to my friend.
Yeah, and when I was little, my brother also believed there were demons in the basement.
Yeah, Raphael, do you think that perhaps two people who, I mean, we're all humans, we all have generally the same brain structure. If this is just a manifestation of abnormal brain activity, do you think that perhaps two people can exhibit that same activity and find each other and then like kind of confirm their conclusions together? Like, do you think that's possible?
if they never talked to each other before, if they
Sure.
never, yes, it's possible.
Yeah, it is.
And you know what else? As humans, we have this kind of sense of creepiness or of danger or whatever, because again, that's how we survived. So if there's like a dark, area of a room, or if there's like a shadow or something, we have a tendency to believe that there's something there rather than not. So it wouldn't surprise me to find out that like multiple people felt that there was something off about one specific house or even one room or one area of a room, because we have that sense that we can't even put our finger on. It's just there that something is weird because we evolved that sense, you know?
I see. I understand.
Yeah, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think so. Raphael, there's a whole host of natural things that can explain the overwhelming feeling that you're being watched, you're being monitored, you're being hunted, something's in the room with you. Owen brought up, like our evolutionary upbringing, how that type of sense, whether even if it's not accurate, that type of sense and acting on those feelings could have promoted survivability or survival in our ancestors. It's better to run from what you think is a predator than to ignore that, and then there's actually a predator in that bush and it's going to eat you. You can couple that with things like a trauma, the fact that we live in a world where we have lots of different things that can alter our brain state, whether on purpose or not. We have lots of chemicals in the air and in our foods and such. Like I can have bad mushrooms on pizza, and that could put me into an abnormal state where I'm experiencing things that aren't actually there. Things that can put the parts of our brain into overdrive and give us that feeling of like, something's watching us. I don't want you to, you don't have to share details if you don't want to, but you said that you lived in that house for 10 years. And I think you said something like it was a very difficult time in your life. Yeah. You don't have to share details. I'm not trying to pry this out of you or anything like that, but trauma can actually exacerbate that. Trauma can actually put you into this hypersensitive state of thinking you're being watched, constantly being monitored. If hypothetically it was like, let's say, an abusive parent and they just want to kind of get you for everything that you ever do, whether it's innocent or not, that can put people into a state of saying, oh, I feel like I'm constantly being watched because my parent was always there to punish me for things that I supposedly did wrong. Like all kinds, and I'm not saying that's the case for you or not, but we have all these naturalistic explanations for why somebody could feel the way that you're feeling. And if you can feel this way for those reasons, for even just one of those reasons, it's very reasonable to expect that other people can feel the same way. And if you happen to meet each other, let's say you're at a support group or you're just friends at school, you can find people, especially now with days of the internet, where you can like post online and you can actually meet other people immediately with similar experiences. It's very easy to say, oh, I see other people experiencing the same thing that I did. We must be onto something. And that's kind of a logical leap because we know that, like I said, all our brains are generally the same. We're all generally, DNA codes us all in the same general way. So our brains are going to malfunction, for lack of a better word, in generally the same way. So this is all naturally explained. And like I said, we're not saying, Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I think you solved the mystery for me. Because,
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, you thought of it because during that period, we went to live with my stepfather, me and my mom, and I watched my mom being raped by him several times, and I was also being raped by him for years.
That will
so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that'll absolutely cause a trauma response in you for sure. One that will put you in a heightened state of alertness, like a PTSD type of thing. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay.
That's terrible. That's terrible to hear. And I'm so sorry to hear that you went through that.
I'm done with this really, but
yeah. But that is a
today I can talk about this. But during that time was hard.
Yeah, But like those are things like obviously you only know the details of it and how bad it was, but you have to like analyze those and go, okay, how might this be affecting me and my judgment about how I feel in general? Because yeah, PTSD and that type of trauma can really stick with you, and it can just kind of influence areas of your life you never expected. And yeah, that's a difficult thing to overcome. But the fact that you can look at that and go, okay, well, maybe this is affecting me. That gives you a path forward to further analyze whether these the supernatural claims, or rather the haunted house claims, are actually true or not. And like I said, if just sit back and just say to yourself, I have to bet money on this. What do I go with? Do I go with this reasonable, naturalistic explanation, or do I have to introduce something like the supernatural and go with that? And if you had to bet $1 million, where would you put that money? For me, almost always, I would say, until the supernatural can be demonstrated, I'm going to bet on the non-supernatural, because I'm not going to like. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term Occam's razor. I like applying.
Maybe.
Yeah, Occam's razor is a really great principle to go by, and it is, in general, it's basically the explanation that has the fewest assumptions is generally more correct than an explanation that has more assumptions. For instance, I want to, yeah. For instance, like let's say I have a tree in the backyard, and whenever I put fruit at the bottom of that tree, the grass around the tree grows greener. A naturalistic explanation is the fruit that I put at the bottom of that tree decomposes and fertilizes the soil, and therefore the grass in that fertilized soil grows greener. That's one explanation. Another explanation is when I put fruit at the bottom of the tree, I am pleasing the tree fairy that lives in the tree, and as a blessing from the tree fairy, she will make the grass grow greener. Those are both explanations. Nothing really illogical about either of them. But if you apply the principle of Occam's razor, you can say, well, wait, hold on. The explanation that's purely natural is better than the one that makes the massive assumption of the supernatural. So whenever you are evaluating why you're feeling this way, or what possible explanations are for why you feel that way in certain households or in certain situations, you want to ask yourself, you want to apply Occam's razor and ask yourself, am I adding any assumptions, baseless assumptions that have no real evidence, assumptions that I can't demonstrate to others or even to myself in some cases? Am I adding those to my explanation when I don't have to? And that's generally a good principle to go by, because then you can eliminate a lot of dead-end roads when it comes to finding the right explanation for the phenomenon you're experiencing.
I agree. I will put that in practice.
Yeah, I think like it has led me wrong, so hopefully it helps you out too.
Yes.
So Raphael, I mean, we appreciate the call, and we appreciate you kind of bearing open some of this trauma for us and such. I hope you.
Thank you too. Thanks for hearing, and I really like you guys. I'll continue to watch you for the rest of my life.
Okay, well, thanks.
Really enjoy it.
Thanks, man, and best of luck. I hope you continue to heal and everything. And yeah, thanks a lot for calling.
You too.
I lost the window. Here we go. Okay. All right. See you, Raphael. Okay. We have one more person to bring back in. I'm going to try Kyle one more time. Kyle, hopefully either you're not driving or you have a headset on. And there also was a lot of background noise from whatever you were driving, so that might be an issue too if you're still driving. Going to bring Kyle back in. Kyle.
Sounds better.
Hi, I'm not driving.
That sounds
anymore.
way better. Excellent.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So Kyle, you said that you have a statement here. You're from Montana. I used to live in Montana. I love that state. It's beautiful.
I'm actually from Missouri, but we always used to say Beaufort, Mo.
Okay. I am terrible with state abbreviations. I'm so sorry. I did the same thing with Maine and Maryland. Okay. So, Kyle, you're a theist, and you say you're making the statement here that DNA coding elements point towards theism. So, you want to elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, I wanna clear it. I'm not a theist. I'm agnostic leaning. This is the only place where I lean towards theism. I've listened to the call show and call shows like this, and the problem that I see is that a lot of the time people that are arguing for this talk about DNA as a language, and they get into the weeds of DNA as language and DNA as coding. And I know that's silly, but I would like to talk more about the elements of emergent properties and how it does that, because I don't think anyone's explained it to me well enough that I don't see some type of meddling, or that's the only place I could see some sort of tinkerer, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, I'm not a biologist, but I do know a decent bit about this, so maybe I can help.
Yeah,
and
I mean, go for it.
I could put my 2 cents in, but just want to be upfront about it. Like, we're neither Owen or I are experts in this field. What you may want to do is call in when Forrest Valkai is on, because he's a biologist, and he would have far more accurate insights into this. What was that?
Erica is on.
Yeah, I've listened to him before. He's good, but no one ever gets. People always get lost in the silly stuff for this.
Right.
Okay.
So, what is how are you kind of analyzing this? Like, what's your perspective on it? Do you have a question about it?
Yeah. So, okay, I'll walk through where I start to get lost on how it's happening. So, when we talk about, or when I'm thinking about emergence, we see DNA, the structure, it functions, the double helix, the way it functions is it is read by a receiver protein. I'm actually not sure how it's read, but I've seen a silly video of the thing walking along the DNA. So somehow that creates proteins or enzymes or connectors in that level. How is it doing the reading? How does the protein structure off of just atomic elements? Like, how do atomic elements translate into structure? That would be one of my questions.
It's a little bit beyond me, but I can say that I don't want to get too carried away with analogies. Like, even the word reading isn't exactly right, because when we hear the word reading, it implies that it's interpreting something, when in reality, a lot of the time it's just in a certain specific shape, and something comes along that fits that shape, and and that works. So it's like, it's not looking for things that fit into it or whatever. It's just things that fit in go into it, and things that don't.
Oh, okay. So it goes across the sequence of code ATATTA whatever, and just purely molecularly, I don't understand how that codes for the formation of proteins. Like, how the mechanics work. Like, like where the gears and levers are turning at a molecular level for that. And that's where I'm like, that's the only place where I could really see tinkering. Other than that, I'm completely agnostic.
Right.
That's the only place you could do tinkering. So you think that there could be a god somewhere in there, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's why I lean towards theism. Yeah, or
I think
that's the only lean I have.
Okay, well, I would say that there were a lot of places that seemed to not really make any sense to a lot of people, but every time we find one of those things where it doesn't really make sense to people, they figure out the answer, and God gets a little bit smaller. He doesn't have to fill that gap anymore, the God of the gaps. There will be a time when we do understand everything, and I think there probably is an answer to your question specifically. It's just that you and I don't know it. But even if there weren't an answer to it specifically, it doesn't mean that there's a God in there anywhere.
Yeah, sure. I just don't have clear explanations for almost every other question that I've had for the universe and cosmology and philosophy and everything. I recently deconverted because I think the answers are sufficient, that God is insufficient. But here's the place where I haven't been able to get a clear answer, because anytime it gets to the DNA question with people, they're only prepared, or they are generally much easier prepared. I guess I should call when Forrest is in, but they're generally much easier prepared to answer the silly arguments. Yeah. And so they don't get into the other ones.
Yeah, definitely Forrest, and also Erica Guts-Gibbon. I think I just announced that they were going to be hosting Skeptalk here. Was it tomorrow? But we can look at. Is it tomorrow? Sorry, I'm trying to pull this back up. Okay, maybe not. But yeah, when either of them are on Skeptalk, you can talk to them about that. But here's the thing, though. Okay, so let's just we can still talk about the methodology you're using, because we can talk about whether how it works mechanically, chemically, how that all works, and if Owen and I still knew that how to answer that question, there can still be doubts in there about, okay, well, why does it work that way? Let's just say, for instance, Kyle, let's just hypothetically, let's say we never discover the answer to how the protein gets copied by the chemical or mechanical means in there. Let's say that's forever be out of our grasp. Does that give us license to put whatever explanation we want in there?
No, but I think the emergences, or I guess I'm coming at it from complexity. I think I know it sounds silly, but it seems like so I heard somebody talk about emergence, like fire as an emergent property. This is the closest they ever got to it. Fire is small emergence, and then you have complex,
I would say,
or simple emergence. Brain waves are complex emergence.
I would say fire's a chemical process, but when we say emergent properties, we're talking about like the attributes something has when certain characteristics are applied to it. Like my brain is certain bits of matter, chemicals, and electricity, and an emergent property of my brain is my mind. So like that's kind of like where I start using that terminology. But even if we have a big question about it, even if we kick that can up and say, okay, well, we're not talking about the actual process, we're simply talking about emergence, like where does it come from, or why does it come from, what we have there.
Yeah.
Like I said, we can still have zero explanation for it, and that doesn't allow us to say, okay, well, I'm going to take a best guess, and I think that guess is this other thing that, like a god, doesn't really have explanatory power, adds a bunch of assumptions to the table. We can't demonstrate it actually exists. Like, we don't have license to do that. That type of thinking is called the argument from incredulity. Or you can simply say, well, I don't see how this could be natural, therefore it must not be natural. That's flawed thinking. The best place we can be at, all of us here being laymen, the best thing we can say is simply, we don't know, and we want to see more evidence before we make a determination about where it comes from. Follow me?
Yeah. The why I said it leaves room. It leaves the biggest amount of room for theism in my eyes, specifically because almost every other question can be answered other than, I think, like universe origins. But I don't need to posit a God in there because I don't know, and nobody else knows. I don't know if anybody can know. So I don't. I feel like we can know about. I feel like somebody does know about this. They've just never been able to explain it to me. I think other people who would come from similar backgrounds as me would. I think other people might run into a similar problem with this thing. When we think about it, like if we're going to keep thinking, at least coming from a Christian background, if I'm going to keep thinking about it, I'm looking like, okay, where would a God fit? And I'm like, well, a tinkerer would, if there's going to be one place, there's a universal tinkerer, and he probably fits right there. That's a guess, you know.
Now, why would sorry, Owen, let me just
you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
Address what you just said there. So I don't want to put words in your mouth there, but I think you maybe kind of revealed a couple of things about perhaps your motivations behind wanting to keep a God in there. Because like simply saying we don't know what's happening here does not eliminate a God out of the explanation. It does not eliminate anything natural out of the explanation. It's just simply an honest admission of, hey, we don't really know what's going on here yet. And Owen mentioned this earlier in that, all of our scientific discoveries, every single one has always been a natural explanation for something. It's kind of like we have a big jar of gumballs, and every time we pull a gumball out of this jar, we can't see in the jar. Every time you pull a gumball out of the jar, it's blue, it's blue, it's blue, it's blue, and it keeps on going blue. That doesn't mean that the next gumball won't be red, but you have no expectation that there is even a red gumball in that jar until you actually see it. And my question, I guess, is, this is kind of getting at your motivations here. Do you have a motivation to keep God in there?
No, my motivation is to, I think, get him out of there as thoroughly as possible, and that's why I'm trying to crack down on this stuff.
I see.
Because
Okay.
that's why I look around for the DNA thing, because that's one of my main problems. I went on to
Right.
the subreddit, the old subreddit for atheism, and he's like, explain how it's not programming. And he's like, well, DNA technically has logic. Like, it got a little too complex in the weeds for me, but as far
Yeah.
as I could tell, they actually had robust argument, where usually the arguments are, I think, simple, critical thinking, or other things that
From
get rid of it. That's what I would
from the
say.
way you describe it, it sounds like they're. Of course, this is being filtered through you, so I don't have an accurate idea what they actually said.
Sure.
But it sounds like there's a bit of equivocation going on there. Like we these like analogies run amok. Like, yeah, we look at DNA, we go, oh, we call it a code, we call it a language, we call it, it's like functional programming and whatnot. That doesn't mean it's actually those things. Kind of the same way that when we look at the physical laws of the universe, we call it a law. But really, what we're talking about is just an unbreakable, an unbroken pattern in the way the universe behaves, and we call those laws. Just because we assign the word law doesn't mean that it's like a legislative law that like a Congress would pass, or that it was like determined and designed and implemented. We use these words and analogies to help us understand, but you stretch any analogy to a certain point, and the analogy will break. And we still have that same problem too. Like even if we didn't have any idea about this DNA and stuff like that, we still can't say, oh, we see these attributes, therefore there must be some unnatural way that it came about, because we can't understand how it could have come out naturally. We have no license to make any of those types of declarations, and we want to be really careful about that.
Right.
And I know you said that. Yeah, go ahead. Go on.
I was going to say, I was going to the computer analogy too, because I just spent like a whole bunch of time trying to understand like how a computer works, and on a granular level. I mean, I know that electricity has to make a round trip, so how to get from the wall clear through, but back to the wall or whatever. So there are a lot of like emergent properties with computers, as you mentioned, but it doesn't mean it's literal magic. And I just looked it up out of curiosity here. I don't know if this means much to you, but as far as I can tell, DNA, so it kind of copies the recipe, which I assume you're looking for, right? The cell copies a specific gene from the DNA into a message called mRNA. It happens in the nucleus. And then it builds the protein. Special helper molecules called tRNA bring the correct amino acids. The ribosome links the amino acids together like beads on a string. When it's done, the chain folds into a specific shape. That's the protein. So is that the process that you're referring to?
Yeah, that process specifically, it doesn't seem to make it seems a little too complex. That's the thing for me, is it seems a little too complex if it's not explained in depth better, because it's like, I want to know how it's doing that at a mechanical level. Like so what it's essentially saying is, yes, it can put together the car, but I'm wondering about how the muscles are moving to put together this car. Like, they're just getting purely ionic. Like, how are they getting signals from essentially matter to make this thing happen? That's what I like. Once we're getting into language problems again, because I'm trying to communicate something that it's like so I signal, and then it's like, okay, then it's reading, and then it gets ultra complicated.
Right, and like muscles specifically, as you mentioned, that's a little bit different from what we're referring to. Obviously, that's where basically two things are attracted to each other when they're electrically charged, and they're squeezing together because they're not quite in the same alignment. That's how muscle kind of contracts or whatever, just sending electrical impulses through it. And as far as the proteins go, just looking a little bit deeper, I mean, everything that happens in our system, everything is all broken down to an even more simple task. Like, we have cells that have organelles, and they're designed to do this one specific thing. But inside of those cells, inside of those organelles, there are even more simple things. It's just very, very simple processes all taking place at the same time and basically coming together to work together. I'm looking at this a little bit more in depth. It says tRNA gets charged with an amino acid. Like inside the cell, an enzyme called aminoacyl tRNA synthase looks for a specific tRNA based on its anti-codon.
I want to pause there. I would like to pause there because the looking problem, like as soon as we hit the looking thing, then it's like, why is, I want to know why it's doing that. I want to know how it's
specific
doing
process.
that.
I don't know this for sure, but just based on it's an educated guess, I would say it's probably, it says it's charged with an amino acid, so it's probably like attracted to it electrically or in some other way. It fits a shape specifically, and that thing fits into that shape. It's not looking around like a person would look around. It's not thinking logically or anything. It's just a certain shape that something else fits into. That's
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So are the shapes fundamental to like reality then? Like how are the shapes?
No, I would say that there are things that are just that shape in the universe, or that are just that shape on Earth. Like they're just that shape, and other things that fit into that shape are attracted to them. It's like when you find, it's like planets going around the sun, right? Like we don't have a billion different little like tiny itty bitty rocks going all over the place. They conglomerated into a planet because they were attracted to each other. It's not like this mystical thing where this all just, something comes together and forces a planet to form. That's just how it happens. It naturally takes place. Like natural selection with evolution is not a fact of the universe. It's just how things operate,
Yeah. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So I see the circles. So when we talk about like rotation and planets makes sense because of orbital mechanics, you're going to end up getting that conglomerate. But that shape is a circle, and a circle makes sense to me. A more complex shape, I don't see how it makes sense because I don't know.
So
like, why aren't
you
we all
don't
just blobs?
know how a more complex shape would what?
I don't know how a more complex shape than a circle would form according to the mechanics of the universe.
Oh, I see. I mean, all kinds of things form. Like I can throw pennies on the floor and they won't form a circle. They'll form a weird shape, right? All kinds of different things form.
Yeah. And again, if we had zero explanation for how a certain shape could form naturally, that doesn't give us license to jump to a supernatural explanation. The answer is just simply we don't know yet.
I think it does give a strong theist a license to doubt that the atheistic explanations are I don't know. I wouldn't say complete, but I'm saying that's what I'm saying.
There is no atheistic. Sorry, Kyle. There is no atheistic explanation for why certain things are the shape they are.
I said theist.
Oh, theist. Okay, sorry, I misheard you.
Yeah, I said theist. They're going to say, well, you don't know how that shape forms, and God done it, and you don't have any reason. You there's no rebuttal for that. I don't think other than
there doesn't have to be a rebuttal. There doesn't have to be a rebuttal to that because that's a logical fallacy. Like you simply saying that you can't explain the opposite, therefore my position's true. That's a shifting of the burden of proof. They need to establish that their position is actually true. So there is no need for a rebuttal other than you're using faulty reasoning. And I can show you why by saying, what if we use this type of reasoning with this other example, and you can see the problem with it. So yeah, there's no rebuttal needed there. Good.
Okay. Yeah.
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 You know what? One more thing I was gonna say. ChatGPT is really useful for just like sitting there and asking it questions like that, like really, really detailed questions. You can Google search this stuff, but it's really hard to get answers to things that you don't know you need to ask in the first place. So it's been useful for that. You could try that out.
Jimmy, not the caller Jimmy, but Jimmy from here on the line. He actually introduced me today to perplexity.ai, which is a chat GPT like system, but the stuff it generates will actually also give you the sources it generated it from. So you can sit there and actually, you don't have to actually trust the AI output. You can actually go to the source that it drew that from and actually get it from the actual authority.
DeepSeek does that too. Yeah, I use DeepSeek for most of my AI questions.
Yeah, well, ask it that and see if it comes up with a good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, once it gets to, I think that once it gets deep enough into like mechanics, it kind of loses focus, and it'll move you to Google Scholar.
Yeah. All right, Kyle. Well, appreciate the conversation. Is there anything you want to close this out with, or
Thank you guys so much for your time.
All right, Kyle. Thanks a lot. Drive safe and have a good night.
Yeah, we'll do. You too.
Bye. I forgot to mention, now that I think of it, I forgot to mention that, I was asking Kyle if he had a motivation for keeping God in there. And he says, no, I actually have the opposite motivation. I want to get God out. And I was thinking about that. We went off on a different topic, or kind of off on the side on that. And listening to that doesn't feel right either, because like an I don't know answer, it doesn't eliminate or confirm anything out of hand. It's just simply saying it's a blank slate until we have more information. Spending time to try to get God out of something is itself a motivation. And it's kind of the same as simply saying, well, I want to get unicorns out of there, or I want to get the fairies out of the explanations. Like, until you know that they're actually a possible explanation, we don't have to worry about it. Lots of people believe in God, but that doesn't add credence to the idea. If a God could be demonstrated, that'd be really great. Or if some other means by which to confirm the supernatural at least exists, that'd be great. But until that happens, we can lump God in with the fairies and the unicorns and the vampires and the Draculas as not viable candidate explanations. Maybe it's possible, but we don't have to like specifically target and eliminate them. Like we're not eliminating unicorns out of our explanations every day because we don't care. I think we should probably treat God the same way. We should not care about the God explanation until it can be shown to be a viable explanation. Anyway, something I thought of after a little bit there.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, Kyle, thank you so much for that call. That was a good call there. Okay, we have one more caller. I think the lines are closed now. And Amargan posted his pizza in the private chat, and I said I was hangry earlier. So Amargan, you are quite the troll, sir. Thank you. Thank you for showing me that. So we're going to go ahead and bring in our last caller here. We've got Lori from Texas. Hello, Lori. Lori is an atheist. Hello. Lori, you're an atheist, it says here, and you're asking the question, how do we feel about cult leaders and drug use in the Bible?
Well, here's my thing. I don't know where I stand on the theist-atheist thing right now. I do know that I don't believe the whole Jesus thing or the Bible. I don't think the Bible came from God. I think Jesus is a fallacy. There were a lot of Jesus messiahs floating around back then. My thing is this.
There was.
I was just watching something about Revelations and Daniel and all this stuff, and it occurred to me, wait a minute. Drug use was prevalent from the beginning of time. Also, if we had David Koresh on there as one of these prophets in the Bible, everybody would be going, nah, that guy's whack of potatoes. Why doesn't anybody say Daniel and all these people are whack of potatoes? Why is it that all of a sudden their revelations came from God, even though they're way out there? You know what I mean? How come nobody, I never saw one debate that said, hey, maybe these people were high on drugs,
I've read through Revelation going, wow, what was this guy dosing with? Because it's some of the imagery in there is pretty out there. Yeah.
There is actually an answer to this though. What was going on? This is, do you know anything about like apocalyptic genre literature? Have you read about it much?
Sure. Yeah. I've read through a lot of this.
Yeah, well, it's super interesting. In case anybody in the listening audience doesn't know, it was like a genre of writing that doesn't exist today, apocalyptic. It was like fantasy or like romance or whatever. And it was usually designed to convey a message. And it was always written in the exact same format, like some cataclysmic event happens that nobody really understands, and at the end of it, the good guy comes out on top. And in every single instance of apocalyptic genre writing, a messenger comes to explain the meaning, like explain what the person just witnessed. And apocalyptic writing really came into its prime in the book of Daniel. It was like that's the first really good full-fledged form of apocalyptic genre writing from the Bible. But again, it wasn't just biblical. There are extra biblical apocalyptic genre texts. So anyway, the reason that stuff came along was because it was just a style of writing that was really interesting to people, and it also kind of acted as a protection. If they were calling out a bigger government, it was a protection against them. They weren't, I wasn't really talking about this government or whatever.
No, exactly, right. Yeah, I just read something about that recently, and a lot of it had to do with, saying things about the government and overthrowing and all of that. And but the point of the matter is that's our interpretation of what was going on then. And why isn't there anywhere in the Bible that somebody said, Joe Schmo over there, he has spouting off all this stuff. He's not a real prophet. You know what I mean? He's a whack potato. That guy is just way out there.
The thing is, they did say that. They did say that. Yeah. It was Jesus. He was the one that people said was like a nutcase. He was the apocalyptic rabbi that was saying that the end is coming any 5 minutes now. And for the record, I do think that there was a ton of drug use back then. You can't tell me that they didn't have weed all over
you can't tell me because there's archaeological record of them finding pots and doing testing on it and finding hallucinogens from, the ancient world. So I don't know why today, people are sitting up here, they're saying, hey, all this stuff is true. All that's apocalyptic writing. All this is whatever. But, if you Google what is a list of cult leaders just from the last few decades, and the list is endless. And there were so many people in Jesus' time, not only named Jesus or the actual name that was Jesus back then, but so many people walking around with their message, and really you don't hear a lot about many of them. There's Jesus Barabbas and Jesus whatever, but there's not many of them that we even hear about, or any of the other, quote unquote messiahs that were the David Koresh's back then.
But part of the reason for that is because there's like an incredible amount of religious freedom in the United States that didn't exist at the time. It was not as open and free. However, there were absolutely cult leaders, 100%. And like I said, Jesus was one of those cult leaders that was discredited and distrusted and disbelieved and mocked because his beliefs were so ridiculous at the time. But
And Laurie, I think like, I don't know if you how familiar are with the apocryphals or all the rejected books out of the Bible. Like, the Bible is a very curated book, and not a lot of people appreciate that as they study it, because they're like, oh, this Bible is like this harmonious a collection of works from a bunch of God-inspired people. And like the process that went into, it's not, it was, like I said, it's a curated book. These books were accepted by committee and formed into this volume that we currently call the Bible. But all the stuff that's on the cutting room floor, contradictory stories, as was mentioned earlier, individuals calling out other individuals for having false beliefs and such. And yes, Jesus was one of many apocalyptic. Jesus was one of many apocalyptic preachers back then. We can, as skeptics and as people who can look at the Bible and kind of be objective about it, not many people that don't have that can look at the Bible as that, because they don't see the Bible as something that was compiled by man. It's obviously God gave it to us. So getting those individuals to kind of get over that and to kind of look at the Bible as, okay, this is just a work of humans and treat it as such, then that opens the door to them kind of seeing all those other issues that are in there.
And I totally agree with that, because honestly, I grew up Catholic. I went to private Catholic schools, yada, yada, yada. They don't teach you a lot of the stuff that here, as I'll be 60 soon, and I think to myself, just been on this journey for about the last year to find out, what do I really believe instead of what was told to me that I had to believe?
Yep.
And once you start down that rabbit hole, I'll tell you why, it's an interesting thing, because you think to yourself, well, wait a minute, there's so many things that you just weren't ever told. And I went to church almost every day of my life, most of my life as a younger person, you know?
Yep.
So
Owen.
the whole thing is a fallacy. The Bible is, I think, just a bunch of whack-a-potatoes making stuff up and people putting things together saying this is what it has to be because God said so. You know?
Owen and I were Jehovah's Witnesses. We were told our entire lives that you know, we have the truth, that we have the most accurate understanding of the Bible, and in reality, we were just taught to be really good proof texters, just really good cherry pickers of the Scripture. We weren't told Bible history. We weren't shown, like, you know, for instance, like things like, I'm not sure how much you're into like gospel, like history and literature analysis, but things like the synoptic problem. Things like the fact that we don't have signed copies of the Gospels, like all those things were like we were kept from understanding those things. And lots of other people are in the same boat. They don't understand like kind of what the deeper things behind the Bible are. They just simply look at the surface and go, this is God's word, and I'm going to take what my preacher says. So yeah, it's getting people past that is the key to getting them to wake up. As you just, you know, you said your past year, you've been taking time to kind of deconstruct, and kind of the sky's the limit once you open your eyes and go, oh, maybe this isn't true. Maybe this isn't from God. Now all of a sudden you can analyze things in a way you never were able to before.
Exactly. And the fact that I got to throw this one more point in there. I'm sorry, I've got to throw this one more point in there.
No worries.
Paul,
go ahead.
Okay. So I have a huge issue with Paul. Paul didn't know Jesus. Paul was like a Jerry Falwell, in my point of view. Okay?
Yeah. Yep. Totally plausible.
The majority of the Bible is Paul. I had no idea about any of this until I started reading and researching and watching, and I thought, oh my gosh, all of these things, it's like 3/4 of the Bible is Paul. And Paul didn't even know Jesus. He just made up his own thing. And I think it was just because he saw a way to make money, and he was a Jerry Falwell. I mean, when you look at it from that point of view and you take it in a world context of the way that we live today, it makes a whole lot of sense. You know?
Yeah, I agree. Like I play around with this every once in a while. This idea that Paul was just a charlatan shyster. Because if you think about it, okay, like this is just me speculating, but I want to keep it all in the realm of the natural. Paul was a persecutor of Christians. He was an opportunist. He was a persecution. You know, hunting down Christians, arresting them, potentially murdering and executing them for the government. So doing it for money, basically. One day, Paul says, wow, I'm getting really tired of this dirty work, and these people are really starting to hate me. Oh, hey, this Christianity movement, I think, is kind of out of our control. We can't really contain it at this point. This is spreading whether we like it or not. One day, I might find myself in these people's crosshairs because I've done so many bad things. Oh, hey, you know what? Maybe what I'll do is I'll turn babyface. I'll claim that I had a revelation from their leader, and then I will co-opt a sect of this religious movement, become their leader, or see how I can go. And now these people, instead of wanting to kill me, they will respect and pay my bills and feed me food and all this stuff. And
give them a place to live, and
give them a place to live. All that.
Yeah, houses everywhere. Right.
Yeah. I have absolutely zero evidence for any of that. And yet that explanation is still more plausible than somebody actually saw Jesus rise from the dead, or saw an apparition of them after they had resurrected. Like I can have a theory like that or a hypothesis like that with zero evidence, and it's more plausible than what Christians will believe. And it's fun to play around with that. Yeah, it's fun to play around with those ideas. But yeah, I think Paul probably at some level he like I said, he co-opted a certain sect of the religious movement. That might have been a common thing where people were interacting with people were interacting with these early Christians, and we actually have writings from early theologians and early scholars calling Christians gullible. Like these people will believe anything. I saw a video on it earlier. I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was Pliny the Younger or somebody like that. but basically like criticizing early Christians for like, wow, these people will believe anything. They're believing a man rose from the dead with no evidence. So yeah, this is like ripe fields for a right person to go in there and kind of like growing the crops of a sect. And that's probably exactly what Paul did. He started his own little sect in Christianity, and his happened to become popular and was an influence on future iterations of it. It's totally plausible. Yeah.
Totally agree with you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting once you dig deeper into the whole thing. You look at the contradictions, and you look at all the missing information, and you look at the people involved, and then you look at, when you go from the beginning of the Bible to John, who's totally different, and you think to yourself, wait a minute. I think John was included simply because of the fact that they needed a quote-unquote good guy. Let's make Jesus a good guy.
Definitely. John was, of course, accepted into the canon Christianity like long after, Jesus was already dead and gone. I think John was like from around 60 years after he died or something, where Mark was only closer to like 40 years after. And John inserted a bunch of stuff that didn't make any sense. Really leaned into
doesn't even follow the flow. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't even follow the flow. I mean, it's so totally different.
Yeah,
but
I think,
that's what, a lot of the Christians today are. What would Jesus do? Well, that all comes from God.
Yeah. I think there is a clear pattern, and when you look at like the Gospels and the how they were written chronologically, how you can see a clear embellishment of the story as you continue forward into John. You can look at Mark, Matthew, and Luke as like gospel version 1.0, version 1.1, and 1.2, because they copy from each other, and you can see how there's like an iteration on it. But then all of a sudden, like John came out, and that was like gospel 2.0. In fact, the very thesis of the entire book is Jesus is God, like just up in the ante as time goes on. And even the rejected apocryphals, rejected books that didn't make it into the Bible, even go further than that. Like I think in one of them, Jesus, when he came back, the cross was there with him, and it was like anthropomorphic, and it could talk and interact with people.
And and talk to people. Yeah.
Like you can see just how this is a fanfic going and becoming crazier and crazier. Kind of like what we see today with our movies. Totally plausible that these things were just stories that were just simply built upon over time, and naturally the stories that were popular stuck around, and the stories that weren't popular disappeared. And so now we have only the popular ones left over. And that would also explain why these stories are so convincing for people these days. Like these stories they've gone through the crucible of credulity, and now these are the ones that work. So yeah, it's fun stuff to really think about and to consider. But no, I completely agree with you. Yeah, Paul came by first. Paul got in by one means or another, by one motivation or another. He influenced quite a lot of stuff. And really, people are exercising a lot of Paulinity these days, and not really probably a lot of Christianity, because we don't know what Christ actually did and said, because we only have the hearsay accounts. So yeah, you can rightfully call Christianity today Paulianity, and it's accurate.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's funny that you say that, because until I started looking into this recently, I honestly, because you don't think about it. You grow up in this religion. This is what you're told. The sermons say this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden one day, your eyes are open. You start looking into stuff, and you say, wait a minute. Where is the actual words of this person named Jesus? Or was Jesus really just a figment of later generations who said, our lives suck? But there was this guy way back then that said all this good stuff. So I hear all these stories. Let's start writing stuff down. And then Paul jumps on the bandwagon like Jerry Falwell, give me your money, And seriously, it's a lot about money for him. He, you read, he's collecting money to give to, the other group. And he's, eating in other people's houses and living places. He's got it made, basically,
One question I like to ask that really makes certain Christians uncomfortable is that, could these stories have been written better? Like you bring up the case with Paul and how Paul never met Jesus, and we can't differentiate. And I mentioned that, hey, we can't differentiate whether Paul was a liar and an opportunist, or whether he was delusional, or whether he actually met a risen Jesus. We have no way to determine what's the case. But the fact that he didn't meet Jesus at all really casts a lot of doubt on the story. You can ask certain Christians, like, could this have been presented to us better? Like, if this really was God's best attempt at conveying to us the most important information ever, why is it so poor? Why is it so poorly done? Why are there 35,000, 40,000 plus denominations on the planet? Why do reasonable people who have high standards of evidence can't get past the hurdles of, well, why should I even believe these fanciful stories when I have nothing to back them up, nothing to corroborate them? Yeah, it's a big mess. And it's probably one of the things that I really enjoy, like, looking at as I've been an atheist now for 15 years, and it's still a fascinating subject to me to kind of look at this and go, wow, what a mess. What an effective mess. So anyway.
That's right. But people back then, they lived terrible lives. So they had to have something to cling to. Jesus said he's going to give us an afterlife. But, was there a Jesus? Or was it all just made up stories? Paul, 3/4 of the Bible. I was so mad when I found that out. Wait a minute. Paul's the one who wrote all those. Well, it depends on scholars, but majority of them. And you think to yourself, well, wait a minute. And then I don't know. I think it really has a lot to do with the lives that people were living back then. They needed something to cling to that was good because their lives were hard. They had, not enough to eat. They were dirty, whatever,
Yeah, I think this will be the last thing that I'll maybe respond on, and then we got to close out in the show. But I think that's accurate, and I think that's also backed up by data, because we can see how we see religiosity increase in areas of the world that have low standards of living, low health, low education, war-torn areas where people are troubled daily with just the very challenges of survival. We see religion increase there. That's why even nowadays in third world countries and countries that are not as well off as say like the United States or Britain or France or even Japan, like we see how religion can get in there and thrive off of the struggles and hardships of the people. And then inversely, you look at certain countries like, in the United States, religiosity is in a nosedive. You look at the, Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, how religiosity there is ultra low compared to the rest of the world, but man, societal health factors are super high. Yeah, I think there's plenty of evidence to back that up, that this message, these stories circulated in a time when, the Jews were under Roman occupation, times were really tough, life expectancy is probably late 30s, early 40s, there's sickness and illness and war and just ripe soil for this stuff to flourish in. And unfortunately, we're dealing with fallout of that now. And so I think the best way to counter that is just continuing to increase the standards of life for everyone around us and education. And I think this will just go away on its own one day. So.
I think you might be right. Well, I thank you for taking my call. And it's been nice to have someone to actually have a conversation with this about, because, if you try to bring this up to normal people, they just look at you like, okay, you're thinking too deeply now. Get out of here.
Yeah, appreciate it, Laura. I really appreciate the call. It was a delightful conversation. Yeah, thank you so much. You have a good night.
You guys have a good night too. Thanks.
All right, goodbye. All right, I think that's everyone. We have Kyle's still in the queue. Oh, that's snooze. Okay, no, that's the old one. Okay, I think we're done. We're done. Yeah, Owen, it was a delight.
Absolutely, yes.
We got to do this more often. Yeah,
100%.
I think. I think it was really fun because you and I have like, we come from kind of the same place, but we have like different perspectives on certain things. And we didn't get into politics all that much tonight, but I know you're on your channel. You talk quite a lot about politics and the current political climate, and I am completely inept to that kind of stuff. But I love talking about.
I've moved away from politics basically entirely on my main channel, and it's relegated to my Fireside channel. So I talk almost exclusively about Jehovah's Witnesses and other cult stuff again on my main channel now.
Yeah, and like I said, just having that kind of varied skill set, I guess, or I wouldn't call it expertise, just areas of interest. Like I like talking about certain things. You like certain things. Yeah, it's good stuff. And I guess that's it for the night. So, Morgan, if you want to cue those credits and that music, folks, I guess I should announce one more time. We have multiple shows during the week. So, starting tomorrow, we're going to have Skeptalk. And then throughout the week, you're going to have things like the Translate Call-In Show, the Hang Up, and the Sunday Show for next week. So, tune in for those. Owen, always a pleasure.
Always.
And we'll see everyone later.